Chapter 51, Seeing Baron Kazan again. A slight breeze blew, and riding on a horse, Chen Heng's gaze was calm as he looked ahead. He could see the road he was used to, and the scenery was incredibly familiar. It was exactly the same as he remembered, and there were not too many changes. However, as he walked further, he realized that there were some things that were different. The most evident was that the roads in the surroundings were more even, and some paths that had been difficult to walk were flattened and made easier to walk. It seemed that Baron Kazan had implemented many of the suggestions that Chen Heng had given him, not just ignoring them. As he continued onwards, he saw some figures waiting ahead. They were all familiar figures, and Chen Heng recognized most of their faces. The one at the lead made Chen Heng feel quite surprised. It was a slightly skinny middle-aged man who was sitting on a horse, silently looking over. Father. Looking at the middle-aged man, a look of delight appeared on Chen Heng's face, and he urged his horse forwards faster. This was the father of Chen Heng's body, the ruler of this region, Baron Kazan. Seeing Chen Heng, Baron Kazan could not help but smile either. Sitting on his horse, he looked at Chen Heng with an earnest gaze. Compared to half a year ago, Chen Heng had changed greatly, because he had been cultivating the knight's breathing technique. He looked much more valiant and became even taller and more well-built. At a glance, he looked like a powerful knight, strong and resolute. He had matured greatly, and just standing there, anyone could sense his unique energy, which made it difficult to forget him. Good. Baron Kazan got off his horse and patted Chen Heng's shoulder. It's been a year. Looking at Chen Heng's face, he could not help but sigh and said, "You came back." "That's right." Chen Heng also smiled and said, "I'm finally back. When I was out, I was always thinking of father. But now, I'm finally back. I had thought that the Kuta royal city was too prosperous and that you wouldn't want to come back." Hearing Chen Heng's words, Baron Kazan could not help but laugh, and he spoke teasingly. "Even though the Kuta royal city is prosperous, in the end, this is my home." Chen Heng smiled. "This is my place." "Well said." Baron Kazan nodded in satisfaction before looking behind Chen Heng and said, "All right, you're finally back, so don't just keep standing there, let's go back." "All right," Chen Heng said with a smile. Following this, they began to walk back to the residence. "Where's Big Brother?" Chen Heng asked out of curiosity. Baron Kazan's group was quite big, and there were many people Chen Heng was familiar with. However, Chen Heng's body's older brother, Ormando, was not among them. Thinking about Ormando, Baron Kazan's expression became cold, as if he did not want to mention him. Chen Heng could not help but feel curious, and after asking about it, he understood. It turned out that recently, Ormando had led a group of guards to attack a merchant group that came from nearby, resulting in the anger of a neighboring ruler, making Baron Kazan feel incredibly troubled. Even though this matter had passed, Baron Kazan had become annoyed towards Ormando, and he had sent him somewhere else so that he would not feel angry whenever he saw him. As such, Ormando was not present when receiving Chen Heng. Then again, even if he was still here, he might not have come to receive Chen Heng. After all, back then, Chen Heng's relationship with his older brother was not very good. After hearing about what Ormando had done in the past year, Chen Heng could not help but shake his head. As expected, some people were not at all qualified to even be his opponents. Over at the Kuta royal city, Chen Heng had been incredibly cautious and worked hard to gather power, and he was now quite exceptional. On the other hand, back here, Ormando not only had not done anything of note but he had also caused a lot of trouble. He was unable to accomplish anything and had spoiled everything. However, this was good for Chen Heng. For Ormando to perform like this, if he was compared to Chen Heng, even if he was the elder son, Baron Kazan would be able to easily make a decision. This made things easier for Chen Heng, although to the current Chen Heng, a mere barony was not much anymore. However, at the end of the day, this was still a source of strength. If he could legitimately succeed a baron's territory, it was better than him having to take it by force. Thinking to the, Chen Heng smiled and continued to walk forwards. Speaking of which, as they walked, Baron Kazan said, "I looked at your suggestions from before, they were quite good. The surrounding rulers also want to join in. Now that you've come back, many of them want to meet you. What do you think?" "Of course," Chen Heng smiled. I'll meet them and have a good chat with them. Apart from coming back to see Baron Kazan, he also came to work on his trade route. The north-south trade route was an incredibly profitable opportunity. With his geographical advantage and his relationship with Crudo's family, he had gathered most of the northern rulers' goods. With Night Slip, Crudo's family was one of the top families among the northern rulers. Even though they were somewhat poor, they were still quite influential among the rest of the northern rulers. Because of their reputation, Chen Heng was able to gather many northern rulers into a merchant alliance, having a monopoly over their goods. According to the agreement, Crudo's family, or rather Chen Heng, would be responsible for selling the northern rulers' goods. The northern rulers promised to give most of their goods to Chen Heng, and he would not privately sell them for a certain amount of time. Of course, such a contract could be quite problematic, but because of their circumstances, the northern rulers did not have much of a choice. Moreover, with Chen Heng's performance, he was able to win over some trust from them. As such, there would not be any problems with this agreement for the time being. This agreement tested Chen Heng's selling ability. If he could not quickly sell the stockpiled goods, allowing the northern rulers to quickly gain profits, this agreement would break down sooner or later. That was one of the reasons why Chen Heng had come back this time. Chapter 52, Trade. If it was just a simple matter of selling, it would not be very difficult for Chen Heng. After all, the Kuta royal city was the Kuta principality's capital, and there were many major figures who could easily buy a large amount of stock. With the relationships that Chen Heng had fostered in the Kuta royal city over the past half a year, selling all of the goods would not be a big problem. It was just that this would cause another problem. If he sold large amounts of similar goods within a short period of time, the large amount of supply would drive down the price, making them difficult to sell in the future. Even if he could sell them in the future, he would not be able to make much profit. Moreover, it was only just the beginning of this partnership. As time went on, when the northern rulers began to benefit, they would work harder to source goods or capture slaves. When that time came, Chen Heng's contacts in the Kuta royal city would not be able to buy all of them. Moreover, considering that he wanted to win over more people, Chen Heng should not do things like this. If he sold all of the goods in the Kuta royal city and asked those major figures to help him sell those goods, they would not thank him and would instead think that this was just a normal trade. Those major figures did not lack their own economic streams, and they would not care much about the small profits that Chen Heng had brought. However, if he could bring these resources to those who truly needed them, the situation would be different. Rather than decorating something already perfect, it was better to provide help in one's hour of need. Most people understood this principle. As such, the rulers near Baron Kazan's territory were better choices to sell to. The rulers in the south were much better off than the rulers in the north. However, they were still limited in some regards. The southern side was better because of the fertile soil and warmer climate, which resulted in them having enough crops. Moreover, even though the southern side was also somewhat chaotic, they did not have to resist outlanders like the northern rulers, so they did not have to spend much on military expenses. However, this only meant that they were not as poverty-stricken as the northern rulers. In actuality, they were not that prosperous either. Often, they were unable to save much over the years, and they could only meet their present expenses. If they wanted to live prosperous lives, it was still quite difficult. For these people, opening up a new economic stream was incredibly important. They would take the profits that Chen Heng could bring more seriously and treasure it more. Once they tasted the benefits, it would not be so easy for them to stop. When that time came, whether they continued willingly or passively, they would have their interests tied to Chen Heng. Unless there was someone who could bring them even greater profits, they would be Chen Heng's greatest supporters. Of course, if he wanted to achieve this goal, he had to gain the cooperation of the surrounding rulers. Baron Kazan was Chen Heng's father, so there were naturally no problems there. However, Chen Heng would have to go and talk to each of the other rulers. Fortunately, things had been going smoothly so far. Just by leaking some information, many people had taken the initiative to arrange meetings with him. It seemed that the situation was quite good. During the next period of time, Chen Heng once again became busy. Not too long after returning home, Chen Hen began to visit the neighboring rulers' residences to engage in discussions with them. At first, everything went very smoothly. In order to bring in these surrounding rulers, Chen Hen gave very favorable conditions. According to the agreement, he would guarantee the southern rulers a portion of the goods from the northern rulers every time and sell them for good prices. The southern rulers could choose to pay the value in crops or other agricultural products. In a certain sense, Chen Hen had become a middleman. He and Crudo's family would provide resources for the various rulers, who would then sell them themselves. This way, all three parties would gain profits. Even though Chen Hen was unable to gain massive profits, he would be able to quickly distribute the northern rulers' goods without oversupplying the market. At the same time, because of the northern side's climate, crops and other agricultural resources were much more expensive than in the south, and furs and slaves were relatively cheap. On the other hand, it was the opposite in the south. When buying furs and slaves from the northern rulers, Chen Hen could use crops and the like as security. After reaching the southern side, he could ask the southern rulers to use crops and agricultural resources as payment. By going from north to south like this, they would be able to profit. For the northern rulers, Chen Hen's actions could solve their problem of oversupply of furs and slaves, while being paid in large amounts of crops would reduce the pressure they faced in terms of food. For the southern rulers, it was not difficult to sell those furs or slaves, no matter if it was traveling merchants or sending their own people to other places to sell them. They could earn large profits without too much effort. Moreover, for the southern side, who had large amounts of crops and food, using those resources as security and payment was no problem either. After all, the southern rulers' poverty was only a money-based poverty. Crops and food were not a big problem at all. This was completely opposite to the northern rulers. This was a classic problem as a result of oversupply. Because the southern side's climate was good, they produced large amounts of crops, but because of the high supply, they were unable to sell them for very high prices. This meant that all southern rulers had large amounts of crops but lacked money. Chen Hen's plan solved this for them. While Chen Hen was busying himself in the southern side, within the palace, Werner finally received his letter for her. "This letter is for me?" Looking at the letter, Werner looked up and asked. Indeed. The female attendant nodded and said, Knight Kalin especially went to Sir Kelly's residence to say goodbye to you before he left. Since you were not there, he left this letter. Knight Kalin has most likely returned to his home by now. I see. Vernon nodded. Thinking of Chen Heng, she could not help but feel a bit sad. Looking at the letter in her hand, she opened it in a hurry and began to read. Chapter 53, Take seriously to the embodiment of beauty, Miss Verna. When you received this letter, I will most likely be on the way home already. Because of some reasons, I have to go back to visit my home and see my father. As such, I have to temporarily leave. Without realizing it, I have spent a year in the Kuta royal city already. During that 1 year, I got to know many people. They were all sincere and reliable, as well as very interesting. All of them are good friends. In the time that I spent away from home, they brought me great joy and gave my soul peace, so that I can continue to advance. However, I was most happy about meeting you. Verna's hand holding the letter slightly trembled and her heart leapt as she quickly continued to read. Even though we have not spent that much time together, every time we meet, I greatly look forward to it and feel joyful. I don't know if you feel the same, but sometimes I simply cannot control my feelings. In my hometown, I often hear that white horses from plains will always meet his knight, being perfectly compatible like a fresh flower and a beautiful girl. I hope that in the future, I will be able to meet with you every day and see you. Sitting on her big bed, Verna read the letter many times, and her heartbeat became faster and faster. Is this a confession? She thought to herself while sitting on her bed, and her face became incredibly red as if she was drunk. Sitting there, she continuously paced about, unable to control her emotions. At that moment, she felt an impulse to go and find her knight and tell him of her feelings. She wanted to tell him that she was looking forward to him coming back and also wanted to be with him every day. However, looking at her locked door, she lowered her head in disappointment. Earlier, she had been forbidden to go out by Olivia. Before, she could occasionally go out and meet with Chen Hen at Kelly's residence. However, Olivia had become quite busy and much stricter recently for some reason, and she did not allow her out anymore, no matter how much she pleaded with her. Thinking about how serious Olivia looked recently, Verna could only sigh and look forward to the future. After this period passed and big sister Olivia finished dealing with her various matters, Knight Kaelin would most likely be back. When that time came, they would be able to meet again. Deep longing welled up in her heart, and looking at the letter in her hand, she could not help but hope that Chen Heng would come back sooner. After thinking about it, she could not help but get up and pick up a pen and paper as she began to write her own letter. On the other side, within a hall, Olivia sat at the center and was dealing with various matters. Recently, she had felt very hard-pressed. All kinds of things continuously weighed down on her. Combined with her little brother's actions, she became even more anxious, and she busied herself with various things. "Your Highness," a black-robed servant came up and said respectfully. "Is Verna demanding to go out again?" Olivia rubbed her forehead, feeling a headache coming on. During this period, her little sister had always been noisily demanding to go out, and she tried all kinds of ways to get out, making her feel incredibly annoyed. Seeing the servant looking after Verna coming over, she guessed that Verna was making a ruckus again. However, she was surprised to see the female servant shake her head. "No." The female servant said with a respectful expression, "Her Highness Verna did not ask to go out. Rather, she asked for a letter of hers to be delivered." Just delivering a letter? Olivia felt quite surprised and nodded. "That's not an issue. Let her send it if she wants. However, I estimate that Kaelin is most likely at his father's territory now, so this letter will most likely take some time to reach him." She smiled and thought to herself before saying, "That's right. What has Kaelin been doing recently? Is there any news from over there?" "Knight Kaelin has been quite busy," the female servant thought before telling Olivia what she knew. "Trade alliance, North and South trade." Olivia listened as she went through her documents. At first, she was just casually listening, but soon, she stopped what she was doing and her expression became more serious. "Bring me all information related to this," she said in the end with a serious expression. After a while, all relevant information was brought over. Everything that Chen Heng had done was recorded in great detail. Ordinary people naturally would not be observed so closely, nor would there be such detailed information about them. Given that Chen Heng was a quasi-knight who was about to awaken a life seed and his close relationship with Verna, Princess Olivia had given instructions to her subordinates to gather information on him. Now, this information seemed to be of use. Olivia soon read through the pile of information, and the more she read, the more serious her expression became. Incredible, incredible. After putting down the documents, she sat there and muttered, "Why didn't I think of this before?" Selling the North's oversupply of furs and slaves to the South, while selling the South's large amount of crops to the North. This was a very simple idea, and as long as one could do it, one could obtain massive profits. However, no one had ever created such a profitable trade route before. It was partially because of a limitation of thinking. Even though this world had powerful existences like knights, it was quite lacking in many areas. The nobles' thinking was quite restricted, and they only thought about milking their subjects. Even if they turned their gazes to places outside their territory, it was usually for taking other people's territory. They rarely thought about economic development like this. An example was Chen Heng's father, Baron Kazan. Before Chen Heng's suggestions, the most economic activity there was trading with traveling merchants. In his territory, everyone could only plant wheat and other grain crops, and those who disobeyed would be hung. Under such circumstances, there would naturally be little economic development. Most other rulers were the same. Apart from their limited thinking, they were also restricted by geography. The Kuta Principality was made up of many nobles' territories, and going from north to south, one had to pass through many rulers' territories. Each ruler would want to earn some profits, which would result in conflicts. There was also risk hidden in this venture. Adding on how chaotic this world was, there were always bandits around, adding to the danger. Even if one could resolve these issues, there was the fact that the northern rulers were closed off to outsiders. All in all, There were many barriers to this. It was because it was so difficult that no one had done this in the past. In just a moment, Olivia could imagine the kinds of problems that Chen Heng had faced when setting this up. What shocked her was that despite all the difficulties, Chen Heng overcame them all and achieved this. Just how did he do it? Olivia could not help but think to herself, and she felt quite interested in Chen Heng. Before, she had just seen Chen Heng as a baron's son, Koripo's student, and a potential knight. She had never thought that Chen Heng would also be so capable in such a regard apart from these prestigious identities. Olivia could not help but feel quite interested in Chen Heng. Of course, what was key was that after all of this, as time went on, Chen Heng's influence and power would definitely increase. Chapter 54, Preparations. Within the hall, Olivia silently thought to herself. As the North-South trade progressed, Chen Heng would become more and more powerful. She was very clear on this. Not only did the North-South trade help the northern rulers escape poverty, but it would also help the southern rulers gain great profits. As the middleman, Chen Heng would also profit. As time went on, no matter if it was the northern rulers or southern rulers, they would become closer with Chen Heng, take him more seriously, and support him more. This was especially so for the northern rulers. Thinking about the northern rulers, Olivia began to think. Were you there when Verna met with Galen? She looked at the female servant with a calm gaze. How were their interactions? She continued to ask. Princess Verna seems to like Knight Galen a lot. The female servant thought for a moment before continuing. Knight Galen seems to feel the same way. He is much more enthusiastic towards Princess Verna than towards other girls. I see, Olivia thought to herself. After having people observe Chen Heng for a while, she had a decent understanding of him. He was a virtuous and almost perfect knight. No matter who they asked, whether it was Kelly or others at the Kuta Royal Academy, they all had high evaluations of him. He was mild and polite to women, and he never offended them. He was sincere and cordial to friends, treating them well. He was incredibly diligent in his training. It was said that he got up before the sun rose to train and never lazed around for even a single day. Olivia had a lot of experience, but only those who committed themselves to their knight training could compare to Chen Heng in some regards. For such a knight to treat Verna especially like this, he most likely quite liked her too. Many thoughts flashed through Olivia's mind. Most royal weddings were quite cruel. They were usually for some kind of political purpose. It was just that as Verna's big sister, she cared greatly about what Verna wanted as well. Since she liked Galen and she felt that Galen could also help her, this was naturally a perfect situation. Sent someone to quickly deliver Verna's letter. She raised her head and said after thinking for a moment, "Yes, Your Highness." The female servant nodded before leaving. What is my big brother, Ormando, doing? Beside a wide river, Chen Heng looked at the attendant next to him and calmly asked. He was sent to a neighboring town by the Baron. It's said that he spends his days drinking until he is drunk, the attendant said respectfully. Have you arranged everything? Chen Heng asked. Everything you asked for has been done. The attendant nodded and said, we have already leaked the information to the bandits. It's just that. Speaking to a look of hesitation appeared on his face. Sir, why are we doing this? These goods are very important to us, and if we leak the news like this, it's possible that they will be tempted to come make trouble for us, if not rob us of those goods. Chen Heng said as he smiled. That's exactly what I want. Why? The attendant could not understand. This time, Chen Heng did not answer. He only silently turned and looked towards the river. Sent someone to Ormando and tell him that after father chased him away, he has been missing him and hopes that he will come back. Looking at the attendant, Chen Heng's gaze was calm as he said, do you understand what to say? I understand. Seeing Chen Heng's expression, the attendant paused for a moment before his expression became serious. The next day, did father really say that? Within the small town, looking at the man in front of him, Ormando's eyes widened. It had been 1 year, and Ormando looked much more lifeless than before. His body was still big, but it had begun to become fat and he stank of alcohol. He stood there, his bloodshot eyes staring at the man in front of him with a look of help in them. It's true. The man nodded. When I was serving my lord, I heard him sigh and say such a thing many times. My lord also regretted chasing you away after all. You are his eldest son, how could he not miss you? I knew it. Hearing those words, Orlando could not help but grin. Father wouldn't abandon me. I'm his eldest son and the successor of the family. My lord secretly greatly wishes for you to return. The man said respectfully, if you can go back now and appear before my lord, he will definitely be very happy. It's good timing that my lord is about to go out with young Master Kalin to visit Baron Myla. If you go over right now, young master, you might be able to catch up to them. Hearing Chen Heng's name, Orlando's expression became cold, and his heart was filled with fury as he said, that bastard dared to come back. Some things were quite strange. Even though Chen Heng had not actually done anything to him, in Orlando's heart, he was in this pitiful situation because of Chen Heng. He did not have any ideas of repentance. I'm going to go back. Standing there, he thought of Chen Heng and coldly laughed. Kalin wants to play his tricks while I'm not there? His plan won't succeed. I'll have him know who is the eldest son and who will succeed father. He immediately had attendants make preparations to return to Baron Kazan's residence. Looking at Orlando, the man who had spoken to him inwardly let out a sigh of relief. The next day, Orlando, what did he come back for? Within the residence, hearing the attendant report of Orlando's return, Baron Kazan's expression immediately became cold. Didn't I tell him to properly reflect on his actions outside? Why did he come back? His expression was quite unsightly, seeming very dissatisfied with Orlando. This dissatisfaction was built up over the past period. Putting aside his qualities compared to Chen Heng's, Orlando did many things that were quite foolish. With Chen Heng as a comparison, he seemed even worse. Chapter 55, Black for People. It's good that Big Brother is back. There's no need for father to be so angry. Looking at Baron Kazan's dissatisfied expression, Chen Heng smiled and said, after all, we're lacking people and it's a good time for him to come back. Baron Kazan coldly harumphed, but listening to Chen Heng's words, he still nodded. At the end of the day, he was still his son. No matter how poorly he performed, he was still his child. Orlando was already back, and if he chased him out again, it would not be very good. Moreover, just like Chen Heng had said, as they had begun trading with neighboring rulers, they indeed lacked helpers. Now that Orlando had come back, if he could help, that would be good too. Thinking to his expression softened and he looked at Mr. White by his side and said, bring him in. Yes, Mr. White nodded before turning and walking out. After a few moments, some footsteps sounded out and Orlando walked in. He was dressed in black robes and looked tall and well built. It was just that his figure seemed more bloated than before. Standing together with Chen Heng, the difference between them was all too evident. You still dare to come back? Looking at Orlando, Kazan's expression was incredibly cold. Father. After walking into the room, Orlando half knelt and said sincerely, during the months that I've left your side, I've greatly missed you. Please allow me to stay by your side once again. He seemed incredibly earnest, and seeing him like this, Baron Kazan's expression became softer. You can get up. He looked at Orlando as he spoke. Let's not bring up matters from the past, he said calmly. It's good that you've come back. Recently, everyone has been very busy. You coming back and helping is better than you staying in that place and drinking all day. We'll set out in a few days. Bring your sword. Looking at Orlando's bloated body, he could not help but frown. Yes, father. Orlando continuously nodded, seeming quite passionate. After a few moments, Baron Kazan left, leaving behind only Chen Heng and Orlando. Big brother. Chen Heng gave a slight smile and went up to greet him with an outstretched hand. However, Orlando did not respond. Looking at Chen Heng, Orlando coldly harumphed before leaving. Chen Heng's hand froze in midair, seeming a bit awkward. Young master. Beside him, Mr. White's voice sounded out, also looking quite awkward. Young Master Orlando, it's fine. Chen Heng's smile did not change and he slowly brought back his hand. He stood there and watched Orlando's figure leave. He inwardly shook his head, and he said goodbye to Mr. White before leaving. Over the next few days, Baron Kazan's residence became quite busy. There were goods from the north all over the place, filling the entire residence. All around, There were some people with dense black fur working hard. So many things. Looking at the goods everywhere, Baron Kazan sighed in amazement. How did you bring so many things over? And those rulers actually let you pass through? As a noble, he knew what the other rulers were like. He did not believe that this world's nobles had great virtues. In actuality, it would not be excessive to call these people bandits. Ormando was one such example. Why had he been sent off by Baron Kazan? It was because he had secretly taken some people to rob a nearby ruler's merchant group. This kind of thing happened quite often, too many to be counted. In actuality, if that merchant group had not belonged to a nearby ruler but was just an ordinary merchant group or belonged to a ruler far away, Ormando would not have been blamed at all. Transport in these times was not very convenient and quite dangerous too. It was not a big deal for a merchant group to be robbed. Baron Kazan had done similar things himself before. From this, it could be seen how dangerous it was to carry out trade in a world like this. From how Baron Kazan saw it, Chen Heng bringing over such a large amount of goods was simply incomprehensible. It would of course be impossible using a conventional path. In response, Chen Heng only smiled and said, "These things were brought over by ships." Ships? Baron Kazan stared. He did not expect this at all. Aren't ships dangerous? Of course, this world had ships, but their technology was not very advanced, and there were many dangers while sailing. As such, from how Baron Kazan saw it, using ships to transport the goods was incredibly risky. As long as there is nothing wrong with the ships, it's actually not very difficult, Chen Heng said, not understanding how Baron Kazan felt. Baron Kazan nodded while still feeling a bit confused, but he did not continue to ask. Who are those people covered with black fur? He asked out of curiosity as he looked at the people working hard to continuously move about the goods. They are from the desert's Blackfur tribe, Chen Heng explained. The northern side is connected to the desert and they often fight. As such, they take many captives who are sold as slaves. These Blackfur people are one such tribe. Compared to ordinary people, these Blackfur people are cheaper and are more hardworking. As such, I took in many of them for labor, Chen Heng explained. He had especially kept the Blackfur people. Of the goods that the northern rulers sold, apart from furs and skins, there were many slaves. Of the slaves, Chen Heng kept many of them for himself. That was how he had spent much of the wealth he had accumulated in the Kuta royal city. As someone from another world, he understood clearly the importance of strength. While strength could be split into individual and collective strength. In terms of individual strength, he was a knight and trained with the knight's breathing technique and body forging technique. In terms of collective strength, he needed to develop his own forces. In order to do this, he made friends with the nobles in the Kuta royal city while also buying slaves to expand the force under his command. Chapter 56. The maintenance of slaves. In order to establish his own faction, relying on himself would not be enough. As someone who had come from a modern society, Chen Heng deeply understood this. As such, after entering into a partnership with the northern rulers, he bought many slaves from them. Slaves were a very good source of manpower. The slaves did not have any rights and belonged to their owners. No matter how they were treated, no one would have any objections. Under normal circumstances, apart from some special slaves, most rulers did not care much about the majority of their slaves. After all, as rulers, they could command their subjects to a certain extent, and whether it was to fight or do other things, they always had free or cheap cannon fodder. On the other hand, even though slaves were cheap, they had to be bought, so it was not as cost-effective. However, Chen Heng did not agree with this. He had many ways to bring out the untapped potential of the slaves. As such, most of the slaves from the northern rulers had been taken in by Chen Heng. The profits he had earned in the Kuta royal city over the past year were mostly spent in this way. He arranged for the slaves to work in his residence, establishing a simple workshop. He also used running water and water power to produce things, and he utilized his connections to sell the things that his residence produced. Baron Kazan did not know about any of this. However, he could feel that Chen Heng's subordinates were quite special. Compared to ordinary people, these Blackfur slaves seemed a bit too hardworking. Not only were they hardworking, but their expressions towards Chen Heng were also quite strange. It was not as if Baron Kazan had never seen slaves before. His own residence had many slaves, and most of them worked on agriculture. It was just that usually, their expressions were numb or fearful, as if they had lost all hope. They did not have any vitality about them. However, Chen Heng's subordinates were completely different. Even though they were slaves, they looked like they were full of life and were extremely diligent, full of energy. They did not seem like slaves at all. Moreover, these slaves seemed to have good physiques and did not seem weak or feeble like other slaves. "How did you do this?" Baron Kazan could not help but ask after silently observing for a while. He could sense that there were too many things that he did not understand about this child. He was simply too capable, and many of the things that he did could not be understood by others. "You need to give them hope." Chen Heng's answer was very direct. "At the end of the day, people and tools are different." He looked at the busily working Blackfur slaves and said softly, "Tools can be repeatedly used but also need to be maintained. Slaves are a special kind of tool and also require maintenance." He continued, "If you give them enough sleep and rest times, as well as sufficient food, proper daily maintenance, they will not collapse, nor will there be any problems with their bodies. Moreover, if you give them a bit of help and show them that through their hard work their lives can become better, their efficiency will greatly increase." Baron Kazan was quite startled. He somewhat understood but was still a bit confused. Give slaves enough rest time and sufficient food? This was not compatible with his views. In order to save on costs, an ordinary person would give slaves as little to eat as possible and make them do the worst jobs. In order to make best use of the slaves, it was better that they did not have any time for themselves so that they could create more value for their owners. Chen Heng's actions were completely different to this kind of thinking. People's bodies require maintenance. Looking at Baron Kazan, Chen Heng explained, "If you want a slave to work hard, helping them have a good body is key. If you want them to have a healthy body, they need appropriate food. If you give them poor quality food for a long period, their bodies will continuously become weaker. In the end, even if you whip them, they will not be able to work harder. Moreover, whipping them is not a very effective method in and of itself," Chen Heng said softly. Listening to Chen Heng's explanation, Baron Kazan nodded, seeming to understand. "I've always been very at ease about whatever you do." He did not continue asking about this and instead changed the topic. "When we go to visit Mila, bring Ormando with us so he can also do some things." "Very well." Chen Heng nodded, not seeming to mind at all. A few days later, after all of the goods had been prepared, Chen Heng once again set out. Compared to the previous few times, this time was extremely important. The previous few times, because trade was just beginning, the surrounding rulers only bought small amounts. However, things were different this time. Chen Heng was bringing over almost all of the goods shipped over this time. They were worth an extremely large amount of money, and it was a figure that made even Baron Kazan feel extremely excited about. If anything went wrong, the losses would be enormous. It was because of this that Baron Kazan brought more than half of his guards with them. Baron Kazan and Ormando traveled within the procession. So many. Sitting on his horse, Ormando looked at the carriages all around them, feeling great desire in his heart. He knew exactly what those carriages contained. According to what he knew, these carriages contained an enormous fortune within them. Once this trade was complete, his family would obtain massive profits. Thinking to the, he could not help but feel incredibly excited. What he did not know was that the seller of these goods was not his family but Chen Heng as an individual. With how valuable these goods were, he could never imagine that they would belong to Chen Heng. It was most likely Baron Kazan who had paid the money for Chen Heng to buy them from the northern rulers, so they belonged to the family. The family's fortune would naturally be his fortune in the future. Thinking about that, Ormando could not help but feel delighted, and his heart rate sped up. Chapter 57, Attack. Perhaps it was because he saw those goods as belonging to himself, but Ormando took his role incredibly seriously, patrolling constantly every day on his horse. Seeing this, Chen Heng only smiled but did not say anything about it. They continued onwards. This world's paths were quite difficult to traverse, this was incredibly evident. In modern society, good paths were like veins and arteries that could greatly increase the speed that goods flowed, reducing obstructions for trade and boosting the economy. However, for rulers of this world, While building good paths might not necessarily bring them many benefits, it could instead increase the danger they faced. A good path meant that the time that it took enemies to attack greatly decreased, increasing the danger one would have to face. These rulers did not understand economics and trade much, but they were very sensitive to military threats. As such, let alone building paths, some rulers would even destroy paths to make it difficult for enemies to attack. Given this, it could be imagined what the paths in this world were like. Even though it was not a great distance, Chen Heng and the others had traveled for 3 or 4 days before finally getting close. "We're nearly there." Walking on the path, Baron Kazan said, "I walked this path when I was young. Soon, we'll be at Baron Myla's territory. If nothing out of the ordinary happens, we should be able to arrive within a few hours," Baron Kazan said with a smile. "Baron Myla sent word that he will bring people to receive us and bring us to his residence," a young man said nearby. "That's good." Chen Heng's gaze was calm as he smiled and nodded. He was riding on a horse, and just as he was about to say something, he paused and instinctively looked over in a certain direction. With his sharp senses, he could sense some abnormalities in the distance. "Are they here?" Sensing this, his expression did not change as he thought to himself. Following this, the procession continued onwards. Perhaps it was because they were close to their destination, but everyone began to move faster, wanting to quickly arrive and rest. However, something that they did not want to see ended up happening. On a small path, shouts sounded from the distance, accompanied by a wave of arrows. As Chen Heng watched on, many people wearing leather armor came out of the thickets and rushed at them. "Those are bandits?" Looking at the figures, Baron Kazan's expression fell. So many of them. The figures were incredibly dense, and it seemed that there were around 300-400 people. Even though 300-400 did not sound like a large figure, in actuality, in areas like this, it was quite a large force. Based on what Chen Heng knew, even though the surrounding rulers had their own forces, they did not have too many people. For a ruler to have 300-400 people, that would already count as quite a powerful force. For example, Baron Kazan only had a force of around 200 guards. Of course, most of the guards were hardened warriors, and they were not people ordinary people could compare to. These bandits were dressed in leather armor and even had crossbows. They did not seem like ordinary fodder. For this trip, Baron Kazan had brought half his guards with him, which was around 100 people. Even adding on the laborers helping transport the goods, they had fewer than 200 people. Adding on the fact that they had been traveling for quite a while and had used up much of their stamina, and that the enemy had been waiting here for them, the gap between them was even greater. Baron Kazan's face was ashen. Now that things had come to this, he had no other choice. Riding on his horse, he drew his sword and led his guards to charge forwards. After a few moments, the two sides clashed. The two different forces collided, turning this area into a battlefield. Shouts and sounds of killing filled the region, and pained cries occasionally sounded out. Looking at this scene, Chen Heng's gaze was calm, and he silently glanced to the side. At the front, Ormando was also fighting with some bandits. Of course, it was not because he was valiant but because he had been forced into this situation. Before, he had been riding at the outside of the group, and when those bandits had charged over, he had wanted to turn and run but it had been too late. Currently, he was riding on his horse and facing off against a bandit also on a horse. Neither of them could deal with the other for now. Even though Ormando looked a bit washed up, he had trained with the guards before and had his foundation. Adding on his good horsemanship, he could hang on for the time being. However, that was all. As for the bandits, from how Chen Heng saw it, they were quite ordinary as well. Perhaps to an ordinary ruler like Baron Kazan they were elites, but to Chen Heng, they were not a big deal. Riding on his horse next to Baron Kazan, Chen Heng's gaze was calm and he silently raised his hand. Next to him, his subordinate immediately understood and raised a small banner. On the banner was Chen Heng's family's crest. Immediately, the Blackfur slaves hiding behind the carriages excitedly rushed into one of the carriages, taking out their weapons. With the guards blocking off the bandits, they were able to quickly take out their weapons and rush forwards. In order to prepare against such an event, Chen Heng had everyone put on leather armor, so this saved them much time. This was the case for Baron Kazan's guards as well. At present, There were only two people who were not wearing armor, Baron Kazan and Dormando. For Baron Kazan, it was because his body was skinny and relatively weak. He was not suited to even wear light armor, so he did not wear any. As for Ormando, it was because he was disdainful of Chen Heng. He had always disliked Chen Heng and looked down on him, so he did not take Chen Heng's advice. They were about to reach Baron Mila's territory, so what was the point of putting on that heavy and uncomfortable armor? When he had said this, Chen Heng only smiled and did not say anything else. Chen Heng wondered if he was regretting it now. At that moment, he raised his head and looked ahead before drawing his sword, raising it up, and charging forwards. Chapter 58, Kill. After Chen Heng joined the fight, the situation quickly turned around. He advanced by himself, continuously swinging his sword, and he almost instantly charged into the crowd of people. Seeing Chen Heng's actions, Baron Kazan was instinctively startled, and he wanted to have people go up and protect Chen Heng. However, he was stunned by Chen Heng's performance. Sitting on his horse, Chen Heng's gaze was calm as he silently slashed ahead of him. His sword continuously tore through the air, causing loud whooshes to sound out. Many people were directly sent flying, unable to resist at all. Many of them had been completely cleaved in half. Following this, Chen Heng's horse whinnied and leapt into the fray of enemies. All around him, large numbers of enemies rushed towards Chen Heng. However, compared to Chen Heng, they seemed incredibly weak. He was simply too fast, like a wolf among sheep. His actions had a suppressive nature about them, and any casual attack could cause massive damage. When those ordinary people faced off against him, they could only take a single blow before being killed or seriously injured. Chen Heng charged about in the crowd of people, seeming incredibly valiant and causing Baron Kazan to feel dumbfounded. This power sitting on his horse next to the carriages, he watched Chen Heng heroically kill enemies. Sensing the power that he was displaying, Baron Kazan was completely stupefied. He had heard of so-called knights before and knew that ordinary people could not stop such existences. During the past year, through Chen Heng's letters, he knew that Chen Heng had become a knight. This was why he had made up his mind to give up on Ormando and have Chen Heng succeed him. However, hearing about it could not compare to seeing it himself. Seeing Chen Heng's power for himself, he realized why knights were valued so greatly. With Kalin's strength, even if my entire force attacks him, they wouldn't be a match for him. This thought flashed through Baron Kazan's mind. He felt that with the strength that Chen Heng had displayed, if he wanted to, it would not be a problem for him to massacre all of these bandits. Just him alone could rival a group of 200 bandits. Crash! A corpse flew out after being hit by Chen Heng, and it heavily slammed onto the ground. Speeding across the ground, Chen Heng's expression was calm, and his body was covered with blood. A suffocating stench of blood spread out. Soon, his surroundings were filled with corpses. In just a short amount of time, he had killed dozens of people, and the corpses had formed a small mountain. Around him, no one dared to come at him anymore. In other places, the Blackfur slaves roared and charged up, forming a simple formation as they pressed forwards, protecting Baron Kazan and the others. It may have been a coincidence, but as they fought, the bandits were continuously forced back towards where Ormando was stuck. The increasing numbers of bandits around him gave him massive pressure. By now, after being shaken by Chen Heng's strength, these bandits no longer had the heart to fight. It was just that facing Ormando in front of them, they did not hesitate to attack. Facing this situation, Ormando felt incredibly bitter, but he could only steel himself and press forwards. Fortunately, there were some guards by his side who could help him resist the bandits for a while. However, as time passed, they gradually fell at a disadvantage and it became harder and harder to defend. Seeing this, Baron Kazan felt incredibly worried. After all, Ormando was his child and no matter how disappointing he was, this would not change. Seeing his son in danger, he would naturally feel incredibly anxious. Kalin. Looking at Chen Heng in the distance, he shouted out. Hearing this, Chen Heng looked over and nodded, before rushing ahead unhesitatingly. He urged his horse forwards, doing his best to quickly reach where Ormando was. On the way, any bandits in front of him or those who tried to stop him were all killed by him, making him look incredibly gallant. Looking at Chen Heng's actions, Baron Kazan let out a sigh of relief. Chen Heng was incredibly strong, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that all of the bandits present combined would not be a match for him. As long as Chen Heng could reach Ormando, Ormando would be saved. Ormando was also thinking the same thing. Despite being in a heated battle, he saw Chen Heng's heroic performance. Even though they conflicted in the past, he could not pay any mind to that right now. If Chen Heng did not come over, he would not be able to hang on for long and would die at these bandits' hands, just like the people who had died at his hands in the past. Death, just thinking of that word caused his heart to tremble and for his entire being to feel anxious. He did his best to raise his sword and unleash as much strength as possible, continuing to fight alongside the guards around him. It was not that he did not want to retreat and leave this place. Rather, once he retreated, he would be leaving his back to these people, and his end would be even worse. I just have to hang on for a little longer. He felt incredibly desperate, and only this thought was in his mind. However, he did not notice that behind him, one of the guards' expressions was becoming quite sinister. Looking at the anxious-looking Ormando, that guard's expression became cold as he slowly crept forwards. A massive force slammed into Ormando from behind, and before he could react, he fell off from his horse before falling onto the ground with a crash. Following this, a large number of bandits swarmed over and inundated him. Ormando. Seeing this, Baron Kazan's eyes widened. He had clearly seen a guard standing behind Ormando push him off his horse before taking that horse himself and speeding off while Ormando's body blocked the bandits. It looked like he was afraid of battle and used Ormando to block the enemies so he could escape. No. Standing there, Baron Kazan could clearly see many bandits crowd over Ormando. At this moment, Chen Heng was only a small distance away. The tragedy seemed to be set in stone. Chapter 59, Deterrence. A large number of bodies already covered Ormando's body. Seeing this, it was not just Baron Kazan's eyes that widened, even Chen Heng frowned and his gaze became cold. He kicked off his horse and soared through the air before sprinting over. He quickly darted among the bandits and was actually even faster than the horse. A gust of wind blew past, and seeing Chen Heng's actions, the eyes of the people in the surroundings widened. So fast. Chen Heng's body was like a gale as he quickly charged forwards. His silver sword continuously slashed out, tearing through the air. On the way, anyone who dared to stand in his way was cut down by him. Get the hell out of my way. He ferociously rushed forwards towards where Ormando was, and soon, he was able to create a gap in the crowd. Blood flew everywhere and the stench of blood spread out. After a few moments, he finally reached Ormando. At that moment, Ormando was silently lying on the ground, his body covered with wounds. The consequences of not wearing armor were fully displayed. As Chen Heng was hurrying over, the bandits around Ormando were afraid that he would resist, so many of them stabbed him. Following this, they trampled on him as they tried to get away from Chen Heng, exacerbating his injuries. By the time Chen Heng arrived, he had stopped breathing, and his body was a mess of blood and flesh. There was no way he could be resuscitated. Standing there and looking at Ormando's corpse, Chen Heng sighed before looking into the distance. He rejoined the battle and killed the escaping bandits, quickly closing out the battle. After the battle was over, Baron Kazan looked at Ormando's corpse silently. In the end, he only deeply sighed and did not say anything. Father standing by the side and looking at Baron Kazan, Chen Heng wanted to say something but stopped himself, as if he was not sure what to say. I'm sorry. In the end, he sighed and half knelt as he said, it was my fault. I expected that there was danger and yet I still brought you and older brother. He looked incredibly ashamed. It's not your fault. Baron Kazan also sighed as he turned and looked at Chen Heng. It was his own decision to come with us, and you also did your best. Baron Kazan had seen everything that Chen Heng had done. When Ormando was in danger, Chen Heng was just as worried as he was and disregarded his own safety to rush over, cutting open a path among the bandits. Chen Heng did not hesitate at all in saving Ormando, and he had truly done his best. Moreover, it was Ormando who had chosen to come with them this time. Chen Heng had warned him that the trip would be dangerous, and he had reminded everyone to wear armor. However, Ormando had ignored this, resulting in him being injured and dying. In a sense, he had brought his death on himself. Thinking to the Baron Kazan lightly sighed again before his expression became cold, and he asked, "Has the guard who pushed Ormando off his horse and escaped been found yet?" "Not yet." In front of him, Mr. White shook his head and said, "That deserter ran quickly," and adding on the fact that the surrounding paths are not easy to traverse, it will take some time to find him. "I'm afraid we'll have to ask Baron Myla to help us find him. After we get back, find me his relatives." Baron Kazan's expression remained just as cold as he said, "I want all of his friends and family to accompany Ormando in death." Yes, Mr. White respectfully nodded, not having any objections at all. Standing there, Chen Heng silently watched all of this but did not say anything. Even though he had planned all of this, Ormando directly dying like this was unexpected. He had been preparing to just use this opportunity to show his martial prowess to Baron Kazan and the neighboring rulers. This bandit group was the largest bandit group in the surroundings. Using this opportunity to destroy this bandit group, Chen Heng would eliminate a threat in the future, as well as show his might to the surrounding rulers. His focus was mostly on the latter. From how Chen Heng saw it, these rulers were not very honest. If he didn't show them his strength, who knew what mischief they would get up to secretly. As for Ormando's death, that was just a bonus. To be fair, he had reminded everyone to wear armor. If Ormando had listened to him and obediently worn armor, it was not likely that he would have died. At most, he would have been heavily injured. Because of his disdain for Chen Heng, he ignored this advice, resulting in this outcome. However, this was good for Chen Heng. Even though he did not care much about Ormando, as an opponent, his existence was still troublesome for Chen Heng. At the very least, seeing him strutting about before him, Chen Heng would always feel quite disgusted. Now that he had died, things would be easier. Standing before Ormando's corpse, Chen Heng's expression was calm as he thought about many things. After a few moments, he left this place. Soon, the sound of footsteps and horses could be heard. Baron Myla's people had finally arrived. Hearing about what had happened here, Baron Myla had personally led his guards to receive them, and he saw this bloodied scene. He was greatly startled and shocked by this spectacle. After hearing about what had happened, as well as the origins of this bandit group, his gaze towards Chen Heng immediately changed. "Kalin is a knight, and it was all thanks to him that we could easily get through this." Baron Kazan lightly sighed as he looked at Baron Myla. He seemed to just incidentally bring up Chen Heng's status as he described Chen Heng's performance. Baron Myla was completely dumbfounded. He looked at the countless corpses scattered all around, as well as the bloodied but uninjured Chen Heng, who looked like a war god, and felt a chill in his heart. Chapter 60, Return Letter. Looking at Chen Heng, the dishonest thoughts that Baron Myla had been harboring in his heart were instantly dispelled. Just as Chen Heng had expected, he indeed had some ill thoughts towards the goods that Chen Heng had brought this time. It was just that after seeing Chen Heng's performance, he no longer dared to have such thoughts. This bandit group had at least 200 people, and they were stronger than an ordinary ruler's force. However, such a force was easily annihilated by Chen Heng. Rather than a fight, it was more accurate to say that a massacre had happened here. This was a very bare threat. Even though his force's strength was superior to that of this bandit group, his guards most likely would not fare any better. If they really fought, they would most likely become icy cold corpses like these bandits as well. Thinking to the Baron Myla became cautious and took Chen Heng more seriously. What made him feel relieved was that Chen Heng seemed to be an amicable person. After the battle, his body was covered with blood, making him seem cold and ruthless, but he was incredibly polite. He was much better than Baron Kazan's other son. Thinking to the other son, Baron Myla could not help but ask, "Ormando didn't come as well?" After what had happened previously, Ormando had become notorious. Baron Myla remembered Ormando, but it was evident that his impression of him was not very good. He had said this to try to relax the atmosphere. But hearing his words, Chen Heng and Baron Kazan fell silent. Baron Myla could not help but feel that something was strange. Only afterwards did he hear of Ormando's death. He was startled and instinctively looked at Chen Heng before quickly lowering his head. Following this, he returned to normal and cordially invited Baron Kazan and Chen Heng to be guests at his residence. Because of what happened to Ormando, Chen Heng and Baron Kazan only stayed at the residence for one day and settled the agreement before leaving. Time gradually passed. Just as Chen Heng expected, after news of that battle spread, the surrounding rulers became much more meek. Through this battle, Chen Heng had successfully shown his martial prowess. The surrounding rulers were all shocked and suppressed any ill thoughts that they harbored. Following this, goods continuously arrived from the north, while the southern rulers continuously provided crops and food. After going to Chen Heng, those crops and food would be sent to another place before being shipped to the northern side by sea. This was quite a complicated process, and there were many variables involved. Having this trade route was Chen Heng's biggest advantage currently. With him maintaining the situation in the south, everything went incredibly smoothly. Even if anything unexpected happened, they were still able to mostly proceed as planned. After settling the initial trades, Chen Heng and the southern rulers were able to come to an initial agreement. Through his channels, Chen Heng was able to provide large amounts of goods from the northern desert and split them among the southern rulers, while southern rulers paid in crops and food. Currently, only the initial agreement had been made, but as more goods were transported and the rulers made more profits, their relationship would become more and more solidified. As Chen Heng continued to busy himself with his goal, a letter from the Kuta royal city arrived. A letter from Verna? Within the sparse bedroom, looking at the letter in his hand, Chen Heng gave a slight smile before beginning to read it. Dear Sir Kalin, just like you, I have been greatly missing you at home. I greatly look forward to the next time I can meet you. I hope that you will enjoy yourself at your hometown, as well as that you will quickly come back. After reading through the letter, Chen Heng smiled and carefully put it away. It seemed that his efforts were beginning to bear fruit. Verna showed that she held great feelings towards him. This was very important. Even in noble families, although fathers and mothers would arrange marriages for their children, what the children wanted was also very important. This was especially so for Verna. From how Chen Heng saw it, perhaps it was because of her circumstances, but Princess Olivia greatly doted on Verna and would respect Verna's wishes in many regards. As such, Verna's own willingness in this regard was very important. At the very least, if Verna greatly resisted the marriage, Princess Olivia most likely would not have her marry that person, even if that person had a high status. This was different to many people. As such, now that Chen Heng had Verna's love, the first step was clear. Now, he needed Princess Olivia and the Queen's acknowledgement. For a princess, it should be her father, the king, making the decision for her. However, from what Chen Heng knew, the current king seemed to be quite ill and would be unconscious for some time. He would only be awake for a short time during the year. As such, most things fell to Princess Olivia and Verna's mother, the Queen, while she greatly favored Princess Olivia. As such, Chen Heng's next goal was to have Princess Olivia acknowledge him. This matter was both difficult and simple. The key difficulty was to make Princess Olivia initiate. After all, Princess Olivia was a suspicious person, and if he took too much of the initiative, she might become wary and suspect that he had ulterior motives. If that happened, things would become much more difficult for him. As such, he did not want to act too obviously. It would be best for Princess Olivia to take the initiative. Sitting in his room, Chen Heng silently thought to himself. After a few moments, he picked up a pen and paper and began to write a return letter to Verna. He was quite proficient at this. After a while, he finished writing the letter and carefully packaged it before giving it to an attendant. Please deliver this to Miss Verna, he said softly. Chapter 61, Intense. Is the information accurate? Chen Heng looked at the servant in front of him and softly asked. After receiving an answer in the affirmative, Chen Heng nodded and allowed the servant to leave. It had been 4 months since he had returned to Baron Kazan's territory, and he had been busy during the entire 4 months, gradually progressing his plans. During this period of time, the Kuta royal city had been quite lively as well. According to Chen Heng's information channels, the second prince, Grith, had returned to the Kuta royal city. Because his mother was the princess of another kingdom, he had a close connection with that kingdom. Many years ago, When the king's health began to fail, Prince Grith left the Kuta Principality and went to the Olis Kingdom, which his mother came from. Because of his mother's identity, as well as the strength he had brought with him from the Kuta Principality, Prince Grith had developed quite well over there and even had many supporters in the Kuta Principality. After all, for the Kuta Principality's king, he was his only son. For many of the more traditional noble families, having a prince become king was much better than choosing a woman. Normally, Prince Grith would stay at the Olis Kingdom, and when he did come back, he would leave soon after. However, this time, he stayed for 2 months in the Kuta royal city. In those 2 months, the Kuta royal city went through a bit of unrest. Chen Heng was not present, so he did not have many details, but he was able to make some guesses from the information that he received. In the past few months, those who supported Princess Olivia and those who supported Prince Grith repeatedly clashed in the Kuta royal city. Even knight-level existences had fought, and this had happened many times. The situation was quite dangerous, and any ordinary people caught up would likely lose their lives. However, Prince Grith had left, and the conflict in the Kuta royal city would most likely be settling down. Sitting on his chair, all kinds of thoughts flashed through Chen Heng's mind, and he silently made a decision. After spending such a long time in the southern side, he had essentially done what he had wanted to do. The trade route had been established and the surrounding rulers had all entered into agreements with him. There was not much more he could do here. As such, it was time to leave and return to the Kuta royal city. Even though the southern side was warmer and not as dangerous, in the end, it was not the center of this kingdom. Chen Heng could receive profits and support here, but if he wanted to go further, he still had to go to the Kuta royal city. As such, after making some arrangements, he began to return to the Kuta royal city. Not too long later, he arrived at the Kuta royal city and returned to his residence. After returning, he began to visit his friends. "Kaylin, you're finally back." Looking at Chen Heng, a delighted look appeared on Kelly's face as he quickly pulled Chen Heng in. "It's been so many months, what have you been up to?" he asked as he looked at Chen Heng. "What else could I be doing?" Chen Heng smiled. "They were just some small matters." "What about you? You look much more tired than before." Compared to a few months ago, Kelly looked evidently more tired and had some dark circles around his eyes. It looked like he hadn't rested well in a long time. "Don't even mention it." Kelly gave a bitter smile and deeply breathed in as he explained. "There were people hiding in your residence?" Hearing Kelly's words, Chen Heng could not help but frown. "Those assassins from before?" "That's right." Kelly gave a bitter smile as he nodded. "Those assassins from before seem to have come from the Olis Kingdom and have been hiding around my residence, making it so that I could never sleep well." "Olis Kingdom?" Chen Heng frowned. "Do you know who was giving them instructions?" Kelly gave a short laugh but did not reply. "Someone who wanted to kill him from the Olis Kingdom. Who else could have done this?" "It was most likely Prince Grith." Kelly's family was one of Princess Olivia's staunchest supporters. As such, it was not surprising at all that Prince Grith would want to shake Princess Olivia's supporters by sending assassins. Following this, Telly filled Chen Heng in on everything that had happened recently. Was there really a duel? After listening to Kelly, Chen Heng felt quite surprised. "That's right." Kelly nodded. "Both people were knights, and you know one of them, Madder. Under Princess Olivia and Prince Grith's arrangements, he and another knight publicly dueled." "What about the result?" Chen Heng looked up and asked. Kelly fell silent for a moment and replied, "Prince Grith's knight was killed by Knight Madder, but Knight Madder was forced to use life ignition and also lost an arm. He cannot move right now. Even if he recovers, he will not have the same strength as before." Chen Heng fell silent. Life ignition was a status that knights obtained after awakening their life seed. However, if they used it too intensely, they would permanently damage their bodies. From what Kelly had described, the battle was so incredibly intense that Madder had used life ignition to its fullest extent, making it so that he could never recover from it. Just this would have been disastrous enough. But he also lost an arm. Just like Kelly had said, even if he could fight again, he would never have the same strength as before. Thinking to the, Chen Heng could not help but inwardly sigh, and at the same time, he felt incredibly grateful for his decision to leave. The situation in the Kuta royal city was too terrifying. One knight had died and another had become crippled. If Chen Heng had remained in the Kuta royal city and not been vigilant, he could have fallen into danger. As such, his decision to temporarily leave the Kuta royal city and avoid this intense situation was definitely the right decision. Where is Knight Madder currently? Chen Heng calmed himself down and asked Kelly before continuing to say, putting everything else aside, he's a knight worthy of my respect. If I can, I hope that I can pay a visit to him. Chapter 62, Audience. Within a room, there was a strange smell from all kinds of medicinal grasses mixed together. At the center of the room, a middle-aged man silently lay on the bed, looking incredibly feeble. His figure looked quite big, but he was covered with wounds from head to toe, and he was completely covered by the smell of medicinal grasses. The space where his right arm should have been was empty. Looking at Madder, Chen Heng lightly sighed. The scene of his fight with Madder back then appeared in his mind. He had never expected Madder to have become like this in a few months. It had to be said that nothing was constant in life. However, in a sense, this was the destiny of knights. As a knight, from the instant that one awakened one's life seed, it was extremely unlikely that they would die of old age. Most knights either died in battles or accidents. As such, it was not surprising that Madder would end up like this. After Chen Heng walked out of Madder's room, Kelly was still waiting there. Let's go. Chen Heng patted Kelly's shoulder before leaving. Of course, before leaving, he had left a gift and gave it to Madder's servants. On the way back, Chen Heng thought to himself while sitting in his carriage. The conflict between Princess Olivia and Prince Grith was more intense than he had expected. As a knight, Madder was one of the top-tier existences in the entire Kuta Principality, and yet he had become like this. As for Prince Grith's knight, he had directly died. From another perspective, this kind of outcome was quite good for Chen Heng. From what he knew, Princess Olivia originally had 3 knights, and now that Madder had become like this, she had essentially lost one of them. Under such circumstances, Chen Heng's value became even more apparent. At the very least, he had become more valuable to Princess Olivia. In his battle with Madder, he had already shown his value. He was incredibly strong, and even Madder, when he was not using his life energy, could not easily defeat him. For him to have such strength, he could be called a quasi-knight, and it was extremely likely that he would become a true knight in the future. Now that she had lost a knight, her attention would most likely fall on him and take him more seriously. It's a pity that I haven't awakened my life seed yet, or else my plan would go even more smoothly. Sitting in the carriage, Chen Heng felt that it was a shame. There was a massive difference between a knight who had awakened a life seed and a knight apprentice who had not. Even though Chen Heng had performed incredibly well, he had not awakened a life seed and was lacking compared to a true knight. If he had already awakened a life seed and was a true knight, his treatment would be completely different. Chen Heng felt quite frustrated about this. After his battle with Madder, he had been working hard at cultivating. Every day, he was either cultivating the knight's breathing technique or the solid rock body forging technique. He had never slacked off. His strength had indeed increased, and with the help of life energy, his progress in the solid rock body forging technique was very fast. However, he was still unable to grasp the feeling of awakening his life seed. It seemed that he was still lacking something. Back then, when it was getting close to awakening, that was when I fought with Madder. Chen Heng thought to himself, it seems that a life seed is easy to be stimulated during battle. For now, he did not have an opportunity to verify his guesses and could only put those thoughts aside. The carriage continued onwards and Chen Heng returned to his residence. After visiting Madder, the following period of time was quite calm, until a certain day. An invitation from Princess Olivia. Looking at the woman in front of him, Chen Heng looked somewhat surprised. Indeed, the woman smiled and said, after a few days, Princess Olivia will have some free time and hopes to invite Sir Kalin for dinner. Will you have time? I will definitely attend to Her Highness' invitation. Chen Heng nodded and did not hesitate to accept Olivia's invitation. Hearing this reply, the woman turned and left. Looking at the woman's back, Chen Heng's gaze was calm but inwardly felt quite pleased. Just as he had expected, Princess Olivia had taken the initiative. This invitation was the first step. Now, whether or not Chen Heng could achieve his goals would depend on his abilities. Thinking to the he turned and began to make preparations. A few days later, the palace's gates slowly opened and revealed the scenery within. After walking in, Chen Heng looked about. The structures in the palace were all quite ancient looking, but they were incredibly grand and splendorous. All around him, there were armored guards standing by the side, looking about attentively. Under their gazes, Chen Heng slowly walked forwards into the depths of the palace. There, Olivia was waiting for him. She was wearing a red dress and looked incredibly refined and beautiful. "Long time no see, Mr. Kalin," she smiled as she said softly. "It is my pleasure to meet you again, esteemed Princess Olivia," Chen Heng said with a respectful expression as he gave an earnest bow. Even though he did not particularly care for etiquette classes, Chen Heng was not lacking at all and looked incredibly courteous and well-mannered. However, different from other people, his body remained straight the entire time, and his gaze was incredibly sharp, giving off a different feeling than other people. He had especially worn a close-fitting robe today. Under the light, his figure seemed incredibly tall and straight, and his handsome face extremely stood out. His gaze was calm yet resolute, and at a glance, he seemed like an exceptional knight. Looking at Chen Heng, Olivia's eyes could not help but light up. Now, she knew why Werner was so infatuated with him. It was not just that he had good virtues and an outstanding character, just his handsome appearance was enough to attract people to him. He came from a noble family, was powerful, had good looks, and was extremely virtuous. Such a knight was indeed able to attract many people's gazes, especially from young women. Looking at Chen Heng, Olivia stared for a moment, seeming to be lost in her thoughts. Chapter 63, The Northern Side's Predicament. "Your Highness." Standing there and seeing Olivia space out, Chen Heng lightly spoke. Olivia came back to her senses. "Apologies." Looking at Chen Heng, she sighed and covered it up, saying, "Apologies, seeing you, I thought of some matters in the past." "I understand." Chen Heng nodded understandingly and did not pry. "During the past few months, you were not in the Kuta royal city. Where did you go?" Olivia asked. She naturally knew everything that Chen Heng had done, but she had just asked this to start the conversation. "I went to my father's territory and stayed there for some time," Chen Heng said honestly. "I had some matters to take care of there." "Oh?" Olivia looked quite interested and asked, "Is it convenient for you to tell me what it was about?" She looked quite curious and there was a smile on her beautiful face, which could make anyone's heart itch. Anyone who saw her like this could find it difficult to resist and tell her everything. However, Chen Heng was not affected and only smiled as he gave a simple outline of what he had done. Even though what he had done was important, it was not a very secretive matter. At the very least, for Princess Olivia, if she wanted to investigate, it would be very easy for her to know everything. Since it was impossible to hide, Chen Heng did not try to keep anything from her. "A north-south trade route." Hearing Chen Heng's answer, a look of surprise appeared on Princess Olivia's face, and her expression was filled with respect. "What a great idea! How did you think of it?" she asked out of curiosity. Even though she was putting on an act, she truly did feel those emotions to a degree. She indeed felt much respect towards what Chen Heng had done and wanted to talk to him more about it. Her performance was not completely fake. "My friend Crudo is the son of a northern ruler. Through this friend of mine, I understood the predicament of the northern rulers, and was flabbergasted at the difference between the northern side and southern side. My idea for the trade route came from this," Chen Heng softly said. "Oh," Olivia became interested. "Tell me, what did you discover?" "That's quite complicated," Chen Heng smiled as he said. "There's climate, as well as crop production. Your Highness might not know, but the difference in climate between the northern side and the southern side is massive. This gravely impacts production, as well as the profits of rulers. Because of the northern side's climate, they cannot produce much crops, and they only have 1/4 the amount of farmland that the southern side has. Moreover, their battles with the desert outlanders have also greatly affected them." Looking at Olivia, Chen Heng explained, "Fighting has affected production because labor that could have been put into agriculture is instead turned into warriors. This further causes their production to fall. As such, these conditions affected the price of crops, causing the price of crops in the northern side to be quite expensive." Indeed, Olivia looked at Chen Heng and agreed with his words. Even though what Chen Heng said was quite simple, In an age like this, not many people were able to understand and say such things. For the nobles who lived within the Kuta royal city, they most likely did not even know about the situation in the northern side, much less draw any conclusions. What should be done in such a situation then? Olivia asked as she looked at Chen Heng with interest. She only asked offhandedly and did not expect Chen Heng to seriously reply. She had asked many people about this before, but none of them were able to give any specific answers. Even those who were very familiar with the northern side did not have any solutions. So she did not expect anything of Chen Heng. What surprised her was that Chen Heng only thought for a few moments before answering. There are two methods, Chen Heng said after thinking for a few moments. The northern rulers' predicament is not actually because of their production abilities but because they are constantly embroiled in war. Just the crop production would not put the northern rulers in such a predicament. After all, even if their farmland did not produce that much, that only meant that they would earn less and would not be as prosperous. At the very least, they would not be poverty-stricken and on the verge of collapse. The true reason for their predicament was that not only was their crop production low, but they also constantly had to face outlander forces. The northern rulers were constantly facing battles, and fighting required expenditures. It was because of this that they were in such a situation. As such, if they wanted to resolve the northern rulers' predicament, the method was actually quite simple. Either the pressure from the desert needs to disappear, or the northern rulers need to be able to profit from their battles with the outlanders, allowing them to go on, Chen Heng said as he looked at Olivia. What should be done to achieve this? Olivia instinctively asked. She still sounded quite casual, but as Chen Heng spoke, she became more and more invested until she was completely focused on what he was saying. As a princess of the Kuta Principality and someone whose territory was close to the northern rulers, she took the northern rulers' problems seriously. In the past, she had listened to many people's recommendations, but none of them were able to analyze the problem as closely as Chen Heng. The solution is actually quite simple. Looking at Olivia becoming more and more enthralled, Chen Heng said, if we want to reduce the burden on the northern rulers, it is best to start with trade. In contrast to the northern side, the southern side's crop production is abundant because of the climate. There are even times when the crops rot in storehouses, and it is incredibly difficult to sell all of it. This is the exact opposite of the northern side's situation. Chen Heng continued to softly speak. Through trade, the southern side's overabundant crops can be sent to the northern side, reducing the northern rulers' costs. On the other hand, the slaves that the northern rulers gain through battle can be distributed through trade, allowing the northern rulers to gain profits through battle. This makes it so that fighting the outlanders is no longer completely unprofitable. If this can be achieved, the pressure on the northern rulers will be greatly decreased and their situation will not be as difficult. Chapter 64, Method. And then what? Olivia's expression was serious as she looked at Chen Heng and asked. She had long since realized how important the North and South trade was. However, before, she cared more about the massive profits hidden within. Hearing Chen Heng's explanation, she realized just how important this trade route was for the northern rulers. Next, the principality needs to give rewards and support to the rulers who make military achievements in battle. Chen Heng continued, in the past, most other rulers ignored the northern rulers fighting with the outlanders, and they felt that it was the northern rulers' problem. However, without the northern side defending against the pressure from the desert, the entire principality would face massive pressure, and those nobles would not have an easy time either. Princess Olivia silently nodded. Indeed, in the past, apart from a small minority, no one cared about the plight of the northern rulers. Everyone felt that them resisting the outlanders from the desert was their duty. On one hand, it was because they were selfish, and on the other, according to this age's traditions, the problems of one territory belonged only to the ruler. Rulers only had rights and responsibilities within their own territories. Under normal circumstances, it would naturally be like this, Chen Heng said. But the situation in the northern side is not ordinary. Defending against the pressure from the desert is not very easy for the northern rulers. If things go on like this, the situation will become quite bad. What will happen? Olivia instinctively asked. War is something that requires investment. If the northern rulers are unable to benefit from it and do not receive any support from the principality, there will only be two possible outcomes, Chen Heng explained. They will either collapse under the immense pressure and the principality will lose its shield in the north, or these northern rulers will seek other ways out. War was something that required expenditure. Crops, weapons, equipment, and manpower were all great costs. When the profits from war could not cover the expenditures, it was inevitable that the northern rulers would continuously become weaker and weaker. When that happened, they would only have two options. They would either continue to bleed out and eventually collapse or search for another path. When that time comes, most northern rulers will search for other paths, Chen Heng softly said and sighed. What do you think they will choose? What is it? Olivia asked, following Chen Heng's thoughts. The answer was quite obvious. They will abandon their territory and lead their armies south, Chen Heng said, since they are unable to make up their losses from fighting. They will pillage and steal from other places. When that time comes, the northern rulers will attack other Kuta rulers, resulting in a great storm. Olivia could not help but shudder. A group of northern rulers who could no longer take their mistreatment and attack southern rulers, this was something that could cause the Kuta principality to fall apart. This was especially so when they found that the southern rulers' armies were much easier to deal with than the outlanders in the desert. Even though the northern rulers were poor, that was because they were constantly fighting. Their battle power was still the highest in Kutu. Adding on the fact that they would be desperate and had no other choice, the power they would explode out with would be terrifying. When that time came, the entire Kuta principality would face a massive storm. Moreover, without the resistance of the northern rulers, the desert's outlanders would also take this opportunity to attack, increasing the pressure on the Kuta principality. Thinking of this outcome, Olivia could not help but shudder. So, in order to avoid this outcome, the Kuta principality must support the northern rulers so they can go on, Chen Heng said as he looked at Olivia. But does the royal family need to directly provide assistance? Olivia asked seriously. Of course not, Chen Heng shook his head as he explained. That would have extraordinary costs. If the royal family bore all of the costs, the royal family would gradually weaken as well and give other rulers an opportunity. As such, the various rulers also need to provide support. How can we achieve that? Olivia asked with an earnest tone, a look of expectation on her face. Without realizing it, she had become fully invested in this conversation. Chen Heng's words greatly broadened her horizons and made her look at the problem from a totally new angle. She had never felt this before. Without realizing it, her attitude had gone from casual, to serious, to expectant. Under current circumstances, this is naturally impossible, Chen Heng said, but there is an exception, which is the opportunity to obtain new territory. You can tell them that if they lead their forces to the north, as long as they can establish themselves in the desert and defend that region, they will be acknowledged as the rulers of that region. Those who are not nobles will have the opportunity to become true nobles. So we can do that too. Olivia stared for a moment before coming to a realization. Indeed, nobles cared greatly about the strength of their family. Under normal circumstances, they absolutely would not be willing to waste any of their family's resources to support the northern rulers. However, territory was an exception. In this world, no matter who it was, everyone wanted their own territory. If they had an opportunity to obtain territory and become a true noble, even if they had to pay a price, there would be people who were interested. This was especially so for second sons who could not inherit territory and become nobles, as well as other children. In order to obtain territory, they would lead their people to fight and take territory for themselves. This would reduce the pressure on the northern rulers. Moreover, the royal family would not have to provide much resources, nor would they have to do much. All they had to do was to acknowledge these rulers and their territory. Thinking to the, Olivia's eyes lit up. Chapter 65, Inquire. Apart from this, the royal family can also give an order. Looking at Olivia, Chen Heng slowly spoke. If any of the Kuta Principality's citizens can set up a territory in the desert, they will be acknowledged as the ruler of the territory, will become a noble, and be given a corresponding title, no matter if they are a slave, merchant, or noble. Regardless of birth, anyone can become a noble. Hearing Chen Heng's words, Olivia's eyes became brighter and brighter. She immediately understood the crux of what Chen Heng was saying. Once this policy was announced, all people who thirsted for territory and a title would definitely swarm to the northern side, helping to take the pressure off the northern rulers. In order to obtain and defend their territory, those people would have to go all out, and this would reduce their own strength. This was essentially equivalent to reducing the strength of noble families to increase the strength of the Kuta Principality's borders. What was key was that those people would be doing this of their own volition. The royal family would not receive a bad reputation while also reaching its goal. Looking at Chen Heng, Olivia's gaze brightened. Her evaluation of him had completely changed. Before, she had just seen Chen Heng as a virtuous and powerful knight. Now, things had completely changed. This person not only had extremely great power but was incredibly talented as well. He could immediately see things that ordinary people would never notice. It was as if he could find the answer to any problem. Looking at Chen Heng with his calm expression, Olivia made up her mind. Even putting aside his great strength, Chen Heng was an incredibly rare genius. For him to have such brains, even if he was not a knight, it would be enough for Olivia to try to win him over. After she made this resolution, she continued to speak. Following this, she started to ask him various questions. What shocked her was that no matter what kind of question she posed, Chen Heng was able to understand what she was thinking and could give an answer that satisfied her. Gradually, Olivia could not help but sigh in amazement. What a pity. Looking at Chen Heng, she said earnestly, "It would have been good if I could have met you earlier. Although, it's not too late now, either." She looked at Chen Heng and smiled. "I'm very glad I invited you here and heard your thoughts on these matters." Princess is flattering me. Chen Heng lowered his head, and did not look pleased at all. "These are just my personal opinions." Princess has the Kuta Principality's most talented people by her side, so I'm sure that these ideas of mine are nothing extraordinary to you. They cannot compare to you. Olivia thought back to her questions and shook her head. All they tell me to do is hurry around, roping in some people. There aren't many who give truly useful suggestions. She could not help but give a look of condescension before saying sincerely, "Kaylin, are you interested in becoming my subordinate?" Chen Heng was startled and stared. So direct. However, if he thought about it, for the distinguished Princess Olivia, she did not need to beat around the bush in recruiting someone. "I should not decline your highness' offer, but I hope that I can discuss this with my father first." Chen Heng bowed and lowered his head, "So please give me a bit of time." Even though he had already made a decision, directly giving an answer now would be too direct and would not be good for Chen Heng's high prestige, nor his development with Verna. As such, pushing and pulling at appropriate times was very important. "It's no problem if you want to discuss with your father." In response to Chen Heng's words, Olivia was very understanding. With Chen Heng's status, he now represented his entire family. According to the culture of this age, if Chen Heng became Olivia's subordinate, his family would be taken to support her as well. After all Manda died, Chen Heng was now Baron Kaizen's only child, as well as his future successor. Once he supported Olivia, this would mean that his entire family was supporting her too. This kind of decision that would affect his entire family indeed required some consideration. This was quite normal. "I understand your considerations." Looking at Chen Heng, Olivia smiled. "However, as Verna's big sister, I need to remind you that Verna is waiting for you. Don't let her wait for too long." Verna. Hearing this, Chen Heng suddenly looked up, a look of surprise on his face. "Your Highness is Verna's older sister?" Indeed. Looking at the shocked expression on Chen Heng's face, Olivia felt quite pleased and nodded. "Verna is my little sister, and the Kuta Principality's third princess." "What, you didn't guess her identity even after knowing her for so long?" Olivia smiled, a teasing look on her face. "I did guess at her identity, but I thought that she was someone from Kelly's family." Chen Heng gave a bitter smile. "I never thought that." "Verna has always been somewhat afraid of strangers and rarely goes out." "It's natural that you didn't guess it." Olivia shook her head as she said, "However, I never thought that she would get to know you and that your friendship would develop to such a degree." Hearing Olivia's words, Chen Heng fell silent as if he was still processing the information that Olivia had just dropped on him. Only after a few moments did he sigh and said, "What does your highness want?" "It's not what I want but what you want," Olivia said as she looked at Chen Heng seriously. "I watched the interaction between the two of you last time. There is no doubt that Werner likes you very much. So, what about you?" Chen Heng sank into silence. Outside the room, in a place he did not know about, a pair of eyes were peeking through a crack, staring at them. There, Werner was wearing a black dress, her female attendant standing next to her. It seemed that she had been standing there for a long time, listening to Olivia and Chen Heng's conversation. Hearing Olivia's question, Werner's heart rate sped up as she stared at Chen Heng, waiting for his reply. Does he like me as well? Does he want to be with me? What is he thinking? Thoughts continuously arose in her mind. Her breathing became erratic, and she felt as if her heart was going to burst. Chapter 66. Answer. Within the silent room, everyone's gazes fell on Chen Heng's body. Sensing Princess Olivia's gaze, Chen Heng remained silent for a long time before finally speaking. "To me, liking or not liking someone is something that is quite vague," he lightly said, breaking the silence. "But I like the feeling of being together with Miss Werner. In the past, I never thought that I would care about someone's figure or existence before. In the past, I never thought about marrying, but now." Chen Heng looked up and said seriously, "If that person is her, I think I am willing. I am willing to walk with her hand in this life and take care of her, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health. No matter what happens, till death do us part." Chen Heng's calm words sounded out. Even though his voice was very calm, they contained a resoluteness that anyone could feel. Listening to those words, Olivia could not help but feel moved. For better or for worse, in sickness and in health, no matter what happens, till death do us part. She stared at Chen Heng's calm but resolute gaze and felt her heart stirred. If anyone else said those words, she would instinctively doubt their sincerity. Even though it was easy to make such a promise, to keep it for an entire lifetime was incredibly difficult. If it was someone else saying these words, even if she felt the emotions behind them, she would doubt how long they would last. However, since they were said by the knight before her, she looked at Chen Heng and thought about who he was and what he had done. Under the faint light, Chen Heng sat there with an incredibly straight figure, his handsome face looking incredibly appealing. There was an indescribable resoluteness in his gaze, making her want to trust him. He had such a perfect exterior and his actions in the past also made him seem perfect as well. He was kind, trustworthy, magnanimous, powerful, diligent, intelligent, and resolute. Such wonderful adjectives would not be an exaggeration to all be used on this night. If it was this person, if it was this night, perhaps he will really do what he said. Olivia could not help but smile, feeling happy for Werner. For some reason, even though she should feel quite happy, she also felt a bit of jealousy. What if this excellent man had fallen for someone else? However, Werner's emotions were completely the opposite. Looking at Chen Heng and hearing his words, Werner almost jumped up, and joy and excitement were written all over her face. "He really does like me too." Looking at Chen Heng sitting down in the room, she could barely contain her delight. In fact, if it wasn't for the female attendant desperately holding on to her, she might not have been able to control herself and rushed into Chen Heng's embrace. "Very good." Hearing Chen Heng's reply, Olivia fell silent for a while before smiling and saying, "Since it's like that, there are no problems. Go back and prepare your things." She continued in an unquestionable tone, "In a few days, you will be officially listed as my subordinate, and we will begin planning your wedding with Werner." Looking at Olivia, Chen Heng raised his head, and seemed to want to say something, but he paused and only nodded as he said, "Yes." After saying this, Olivia waved her hand, indicating that Chen Heng could leave. Chen Heng followed the path that he had arrived from and slowly walked out. Soon, he came to where he had arrived from and prepared to get on his carriage. "Sir, shall we leave?" the driver softly asked. Chen Heng nodded, but he seemed to sense something and slowly turned and looked towards a corner. In the corner, there was a girl dressed in a long dress, looking quite pretty. She was looking at him, a big smile on her face. Seeing Chen Heng look over, She excitedly waved and grinned at him. Chen Heng also waved back and smiled. The two of them looked at each other for a long time. Only after some sounds could be heard from outside did Chen Heng come back to his senses. Looking at Werner, he gave an apologetic smile before getting on his carriage and leaving. "Your Highness, we should go back," the female attendant said to Werner, looking at the slowly disappearing carriage. "All right." Werner was reluctant to part with Chen Heng, and looking at the carriage driving off, she nodded. "Let's go." On the way back, sitting in the carriage, Chen Heng silently thought to himself. After what had happened today, the matter with Werner had been resolved. With Princess Olivia's status, since she had agreed to it, there would be no issues with this anymore. Marrying Princess Werner was only the first step for Chen Heng. To him, what was the most important thing was to use Werner's identity to obtain benefits. After marrying Werner, I will be part of the Kuta royal family and one of Princess Olivia's closest subordinates. Sitting in the carriage, Chen Heng thought to himself, using this identity, I can get my own territory. Perhaps getting an incredibly prosperous and fertile one will not be possible, but one on the northern side close to the desert should be no problem. Werner was the Kuta Principality's third princess, and because she was Olivia's biological sister, her relationship with Olivia was incredibly close. After Chen Heng married Werner, even if he was not willing, he would become part of Princess Olivia's faction. Olivia would most likely greatly value this brother-in-law of hers, and she would use her power and connections to get him a decent territory. This was not just helping Chen Heng but helping herself as well. After all, according to this world's culture, after Chen Heng married Werner, he would become one of her subordinates. The stronger Chen Heng was, the more he would be able to help her. Even if it was just because of this, Olivia would arrange for Chen Heng to go to an important place. This was especially so after he had displayed his power. Chapter 67, Koripo's Return. Time gradually passed, and without realizing it, it had been many months since Chen Heng had returned to the Kuta royal city. In the past few months, after Princess Olivia had clashed with Princess Grith, many things had happened. The event that most people were focused on was Princess Werner's marriage to Knight Kalin from the Nardo family. This was undoubtedly something that made many people excited. As a member of the royal family, even though Princess Werner did not have much presence and could not compare to her older brother or sister, she was still a princess and had a prestigious identity. In the past, there were many people who wanted to marry this princess, but they were all blocked out by Olivia. And now, news of this princess marriage had suddenly been announced, and her husband was a noble from a small noble family. Immediately, the Nardo family became famous in the Kuta royal city. As this news was spread, Chen Heng's own information became known by many people. He came from a small noble family and was now the sole successor. His teacher was Koripo and was a powerful knight who would soon awaken a life seed. As his information spread, dissatisfaction towards this marriage gradually decreased. Frankly speaking, Chen Heng's status was not very high. For most nobles in the Kuta royal city, a baron's status was quite low. However, Chen Heng's family had its own territory, and the territory was quite prosperous. Under such circumstances, Chen Heng being the sole successor of his family put him in a good position. Moreover, as a quasi-knight, he was better than some people. A genius knight who was about to awaken his life seed, this identity was not any inferior to the descendants of large noble families. Moreover, being Koripo's student further made up for any remaining deficiencies. As the Kuta Principality's guardian knight, Koripo's position was only below the king's. Before him, titles did not mean much. As Koripo's student, Chen Heng's identity naturally was not simple either. Chen Heng and Werner's wedding was not as lavish as most royal family weddings, but it was not as low profile as expected. At the very least, those who should know knew about it. On the day of the wedding, Baron Kazan brought his people over and acted as a witness. When Chen Heng had told him about this wedding, he became so excited that he was almost unable to sleep, wondering whether he was dreaming. On the day of the wedding, Princess Olivia was present, and she congratulated both of them. This wedding caused big waves, but as time went on, the effects of the wedding gradually died down. It was just that Chen Heng now had the title of Royal Knight. Time gradually passed. Early in the morning, within a quiet courtyard, Chen Heng was training with his sword. It was still very early, and most other people were still awake. Only he was here, training by himself. After a while, a servant walked over. "Sir, Mr. Crudo has come," she said softly as she looked at Chen Heng. "I see." Hearing this, Chen Heng felt a bit surprised but still nodded. Afterwards, he walked to the courtyard outside. After marrying Verna, his residence had changed. He had originally lived in a relatively remote area, but now he lived in a luxurious area. However, because he had married Princess Verna, some rules had changed. Before, when Crudo came to visit him, he could just directly walk in, but now he had to announce himself. After Chen Heng walked into the hall, the big muscular man saw him and gave a slight smile. "Kalin, my friend." He quickly walked over and gave Chen Heng a hug. "I went back to the northern side recently and only just heard of your marriage." After letting go of Chen Heng, he grinned. "Hopefully I didn't disturb you." "There's nothing much to disturb," Chen Heng smiled. "It's still early and Verna is still sleeping. I was just doing my training." "It's good to see you again." "Is that so?" Crudo laughed and said, "That's right. Has there been any news from teacher?" "Yes," Chen Heng nodded. "Teacher sent someone to tell us that he will be back in a few days. When the time comes, he will come look for us himself." "That's good." Crudo smiled. "It has been a long time since we've seen teacher." "Indeed," Chen Heng nodded and said, "According to Koripo's original plan, he should have come back half a year ago. However, because of some changes to plan, Koripo had been delayed again and again, and only now was he confident that he could come back soon. I wonder if teacher will be shocked when he comes back and sees us." Chen Heng grinned while looking at Crudo. "Surely he will." Crudo also smiled, looking quite expectant. They chatted and trained together for a while, just like before. Following this, Crudo left behind the gifts he had brought before leaving. The next few days passed quickly. 3 days later, Chen Heng finally received news from Koripo that he had arrived, and he went with Crudo to meet him. Who would have thought there would be such big changes in half a year? Koripo could not help but smile as he spoke while standing at the familiar training ground and looking at Chen Heng and Crudo. After half a year, even though Koripo did not look too different, he looked a bit grimmer and more tired. "This is especially so for you, Kalin." Standing there, he looked at Chen Heng with a slight smile. "I never thought that in just half a year, you would have gotten married, and I missed it." "It's not too late for you to give me a wedding gift now." Chen Heng smiled as he stretched out his hand playfully. "You're quite direct, eh?" Koripo smiled. "Don't worry, you'll get a present." "In actuality, I left this time for you too." "For us?" Chen Heng and Crudo were both surprised. "It should be about time for your life seeds to awaken." Looking at Chen Heng and Crudo, Koripo spoke. "That is why I left." "Awaken life seeds?" Hearing these words, Chen Heng felt quite surprised. "It has to do with our life seeds?" "Indeed." Koripo nodded and took out something and stretched out his hand. Chapter 68, Original Nobles. This is looking at the thing in Koripo's hand. Chen Heng and Crudo were both quite surprised. It was a small glass bottle. The glass bottle was as wide as an ordinary person's hand and contained some black liquid. It looked like black blood and seemed quite unique. Just looking at this bottle of black liquid, one could almost feel the special energy within it. It was as if the liquid was alive and contained some kind of life force. Black wolf's blood. This is a medicine that is very rarely seen anymore in this continent, and it is very precious. Looking at this bottle, Koripo sighed and said, "If you use this black wolf's blood, you can ignite your life energy further and awaken a life seed. Of course, its side effects are quite evident as well." Koripo raised his head and looked at Chen Heng and Crudo and said, "After drinking the black wolf's blood, you will completely ignite your life energy, and this ignition will only stop after you awaken your life seed. If you don't awaken a life seed, then what will happen?" Chen Heng frowned and instinctively asked, "What do you think will happen after you completely exhaust all of your life energy?" Koripo asked calmly, "Under normal circumstances, if a knight fails at awakening their life seed, most of the time they will be able to survive. However, after drinking this black wolf's blood you fail at awakening a life seed, the only thing that awaits you will be death. So, are you afraid?" Koripo looked at Chen Heng and Crudo as he asked coldly. The two of them fell silent. Death, with their ages, Facing this kind of life or death decision, it still seemed a bit early. However, not too long after, Chen Heng smiled. With such a great risk, surely there are some benefits, right? Teacher, you left for so long to obtain this for us. Surely it wasn't just to kill us. Of course. Koripo also smiled, and the serious atmosphere disappeared. The risks are great, but it can also greatly increase the possibility of you awakening a life seed. If a person uses Black Wolf's blood and dies, even if that person tried to awaken their life seed under normal circumstances, they would not have been able to do so. Koripo said calmly. So it's like that. Chen Heng felt enlightened and understood what Koripo's intention was. It seemed that the Black Wolf's blood was only for those who had hope at awakening a life seed. If one originally did not have any hope at awakening a life seed but wanted to forcefully awaken it with the Black Wolf's blood, their end would be quite wretched. The Black Wolf's blood would only be useful to those with sufficient talent and had the qualifications to awaken a life seed. In other words, this kind of thing only played a supportive effect and would not change one's destiny. Did Chen Heng and Crudo have hope in awakening a life seed? It was unquestionable. Whether it was Chen Heng or Crudo, they had decent talent. Or else, they would not have reached this stage within just a short period of time. For Chen Heng, even though his night talent might not be able to compare to Crudo's, it was definitely above average. Combined with his powerful body, there was a high possibility of him awakening a life seed. In actuality, half a year ago, he had already shown signs of awakening his life seed during his battle with Mada. It was just that he had suppressed it so that he could wait for a safer opportunity. If we calculate the time, it's about the right time for you to use this, Koripo said as he looked at the two of them. I'll say this first. Even though the risk of death from using this thing is not that high, it still exists. As such, whether or not you want to use it remains with yourself. Come and find me when you've decided whether or not you want to use it, Koripo said before handing the glass bottle to Chen Heng and Crudo. The two of them nodded to show that they understood. Following this, they continued to chat before taking out their weapons and training. Just like before, they used their weapons to spar against Koripo. This was one of his ways to examine their progress. After all, they had not seen each other in half a year, so in order to get a feel for their abilities again, he had to do this. Your strength has increased to such an extent. During the process, Koripo was quite shocked towards Chen Heng's improvement. This is quite surprising. You were able to raise your power to such a level without awakening a life seed. How did you do it? Koripo looked up and down Chen Heng's body, a look of disbelief on his face. Chen Heng's gaze was calm as he was examined. Over the past half a year, with the help of life energy, he had made great progress with the solid rock body forging technique. He had finished the first step and was about to enter the second step. With the body forging technique's help, his constitution was more powerful than Crudo's, and he was more powerful than that of an ordinary knight's. If an ordinary knight did not stimulate their life seed and fought with Chen Heng, it would be difficult to tell who was stronger. This kind of abnormal performance immediately caught Koripo's attention. You're not a knight, and yet you're stronger than some knights. He stood in front of Chen Heng and continuously looked over Chen Heng. Why is this, teacher? Crudo asked in admiration. Over the past half a year, his strength had also increased, and he was nearly at the point of being able to awaken a life seed. However, after reaching this point, it was incredibly difficult for him to make any progress. Compared to him, Chen Heng had reached this point half a year ago, but he was still improving quickly. He could not help but feel admiration towards Chen Heng. This might be because of his bloodline and body. After looking over Chen Heng, Koripo came back to his senses and answered, everyone's bodies are different, and in this world, there are many people who are naturally quite special. In fact, they might not even be called humans. Might not be called humans? Chen Heng and Crudo felt quite confused. Looking at their expressions, Koripo shook his head and said, do you know how the original nobles came about? Chapter 69, The Way to Leave. Original nobles? Hearing Koripo's words, Chen Heng and Crudo once again became startled. The nobles you've seen now only have legacies of fortune and authority, but they're essentially all ordinary people. Looking at Chen Heng and Crudo, Koripo said seriously, in actuality, True nobles have a legacy of bloodline. In this world, many people's bloodlines contain massive power. Their ancestors were incredibly powerful or fused with powerful bloodlines, making them naturally stronger than ordinary people. Even without doing much training, they will be able to gain great power. He continued, only such people can be called true nobles. Only those with powerful bloodlines are true nobles. Looking at Koropo and hearing those words, Chen Heng instantly thought of something. Before he started each simulation, there was an identity selection, and one of the options was the noble family selection. In the description of the noble families, it stated that they had powerful bloodlines. Back then, Chen Heng had not thought about it too much. But after hearing Koropo's words he had come to a realization. I see. He raised his head, thinking to himself, perhaps according to the simulation, only people with powerful bloodlines are considered true nobles. As for a noble family like mine, which only has legacies of fortune and authority, we're still ordinary people and are not considered true nobles by the simulation. Before, Chen Heng had always felt quite curious. Back when he had started, he had evidently chosen the ordinary family identity and only spent 30 points on it. On the other hand, the points required for a noble family started from at least 1,000 points. However, Chen Heng had been born into a noble family with only a measly 30 points. He had thought that his luck had been extraordinarily good. Now, it seemed that it was not because of luck but because the simulation had different standards. According to the simulation, those without powerful bloodlines did not count as true nobles. Chen Heng finally understood. So it seemed that he had not won the lottery in being born into a noble family, but rather, by the simulation standards, this identity of his was still considered an ordinary family. Of course, for him to be able to obtain this kind of identity with just 30 points, Chen Heng was still quite satisfied. It was just that it was not as excellent as he had expected. Koropo was still speaking. As such, for Kalin, it might be that his body has part of his ancestors' bloodline, resulting in his constitution being different than other people's. Looking at Chen Heng, Koropo said uncertainly, otherwise, according to normal practices, it would be impossible for his body to be powerful to such a degree without having awakened a life seed. So he explained it all away like that. Chen Heng looked at Koropo in surprise. Of course, when something incomprehensible happened, other people would often explain it based on their limited understanding. So it's like that. Chen Heng had a look of understanding on his face, as if he had been enlightened by Koropo's explanation. A bloodline from ancestors standing by the side, Kruder muttered to himself. At that moment, he suddenly looked up at Koropo and asked, but according to Mr. Koropo's explanation, since those nobles with ancient bloodlines are so powerful, why have we never seen one before? Who said you've never seen one before? Koropo gave him a deep look. Isn't there one right before you? There was one in front of them. Chen Heng was startled before looking at Koropo, thinking to himself, powerful and having such understanding of this. Does this mean, Mr. Koropo, that you? The more he thought that it was possible. Koropo was powerful, had a mysterious background, and held extensive knowledge and a respected position. Koropo greatly fitted the description of a true noble. That's right. Standing by the side, Krudo did not think too much and thought that Koropo was talking about Chen Heng, so he nodded in agreement. However, in this continent, there are indeed very few nobles with ancient bloodlines. Standing in front of them, Koropo lightly sighed and said, the world has changed. To ordinary people, it doesn't matter. But for the ancient noble families, this continent is simply too barren and there is not much reason for them to stay here. As such, most of them left here and only left behind some weak ones who were unable to leave. They are still here, fighting for their interests. The powerful ones have already left, and this continent. Chen Heng thought to himself. Koropo may not have meant much by it, but Chen Heng was deep in thought. To Chen Heng, Koropo had revealed a lot of information through his words. The powerful nobles had already left. What counted as powerful? It would at least be relative to Koropo himself. As such, among the nobles who had left, most were more powerful than Koropo. Moreover, by talking about this continent, this showed that this world's nautical technologies and civilization were not as behind as he had thought. At the very least, Koropo knew of the concept of a continent. Moreover, The reason that those true nobles left this continent was because it was too barren. In that case, there were even more prosperous and powerful continents than this one. Koripo did not know that in such a short time, Chen Heng had thought about so many things about the other continents. Chen Heng suddenly spoke. Back then, how did those people go to other continents? Why have we never heard about other continents before? Crudo also turned and looked at Koripo, seeming quite curious about this question. Traveling to other continents requires a ship. Koripo fell silent for a moment before continuing. According to my information, every few years, a ship will pass by here. However, getting on that ship is not easy and requires a ticket. Chapter 70, Life Seed. Ticket? Hearing Koripo's words, Chen Heng became quite curious. How can one obtain such a thing? Koripo looked at him before shaking his head, saying, I'm not sure. However, I do know one thing. Only true nobles with powerful bloodlines will have a ticket. Ordinary people do not have the qualification to have such a ticket. So it's like that. Chen Heng frowned. That means only true nobles with powerful bloodlines can get on a ship to leave. That is indeed the case under normal circumstances. Koripo nodded, but there are exceptions. If you have great talent in a certain area and can be taken in by a true noble as a follower, you can get on the ship with that noble. I see. Chen Heng nodded before continuing to ask questions. The two of them continued to go on like this, one asking questions and the other answering, while Crudo stood by the side and silently listened. He was listening quite attentively, but he was not very interested in that ship ticket. After all, he did not have any thoughts about leaving this continent. Since he did not want to leave, he naturally did not care about the ship ticket. In actuality, Chen Heng was the same. He was only asking Koripo these questions to gain a better understanding of this world. He did not actually want to leave this continent. He had worked hard in this continent and established a foundation. As long as he could hang on, he would be able to see his efforts pay off in the long term. If he rashly left this continent, everything he had worked for would have been for nothing. If he went to a new continent, he would have to start all over again, and it would waste a lot of his time. After chatting with Koripo, Chen Heng's horizons had been greatly broadened, and he knew much more about this world. It was evident that this world was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. It could even be said that it was much more spectacular than Chen Heng had imagined. It was just that Chen Heng had not come into contact with many things. However, none of this mattered. He was not like an ordinary person who only had one chance. For Chen Heng, even if he could not come into contact with those things this time, there was a next time. After many simulations, one day, he would come into contact with this world's deepest secret and obtain the truth about this world. It was just that before then, he needed to just focus on being the best him. After talking with Koripo, Chen Heng made a request. Are you sure you want to drink the Black Wolf's blood right now? Looking at Chen Heng, Koripo's expression was quite surprised. You don't want to wait? Your constitution is special, and you still have space to grow. There's no need for you to try right now. There's no need. Chen Heng smiled and said, I can already sense my progress becoming much slower. If I continue to wait, I will just be wasting time. There's no point to it. He had reached the second step of the solid rock body forging technique, and he was about to condense a solid rock body. Now that he had reached this step, his speed had become much slower, and he could no longer advance as quickly and efficiently. Rather than continuing to slowly progress like this, it was better to try to awaken his life seed. Hearing this, Koripo nodded. Following this, Chen Heng took off his clothes from his upper body and pasted a special medicinal paste on his body before drinking down the Black Wolf's blood. A sour and sweet taste spread through Chen Heng's mouth before spreading to his brain. Soon, his entire brain felt as if it was burning, and he felt as if there was a fire burning his entire body, making him feel quite uncomfortable. This feeling was even more intense than during life ignition. It was like comparing a matchstick to a bonfire. Extreme pain spread from all areas of Chen Heng's body, making him want to cry out. However, Chen Heng endured the pain and did not make any sound. Sweat flowed down his body, and a faint blood red color could be seen over his body as the searing aura continuously spread out, making Chen Heng seem like a furnace that gave off a massive amount of heat. This was undoubtedly an extremely painful experience. but using his incredibly powerful willpower, Chen Heng was able to endure it. Looking at this scene, Koripo gave a faint smile. To be able to endure pain from the Black Wolf's blood, Chen Heng had essentially passed the first stage. If he was unable to get through this first stage, his mind would be twisted by the extreme pain, resulting in the awakening of the life seed failing. After using the Black Wolf's blood, if the awakening failed, the knight would die. However, Chen Heng undoubtedly passed this stage easily. Koripo was not surprised at all. As Chen Heng's teacher, he knew Chen Heng quite well. From how he saw it, if Chen Heng could not endure this stage, it would be extremely strange. Time gradually passed. Before Chen Heng knew it, the intense pain gradually subsided. Drops of sweat continued to fall, but they had become red-colored. Drops of blood continuously leaked out from Chen Heng's skin, making him look quite chilling. At the same time, there were new changes going on in Chen Heng's body. Bang, bang, bang. Loud sounds continuously sounded out, sounding like a heartbeat or war drums. Crudo seemed to hear Chen Heng grunt before the aura around him suddenly changed. Searing heat waves spread out in all directions, covering him and Koripo. Sensing this feeling, he could not help but open his eyes and look ahead. This is, bang, a strange sound rang out. Ahead, Chen Heng slowly opened his eyes. Life energy was continuously spreading out from his body, seeming to create a surface of white light around him, but it quickly disappeared. It was so quick that Crudo thought that he was seeing things. Looks like the effects were quite good. Looking at the changes in Chen Heng, Koripo gave a slight smile. The effects from Chen Heng drinking the Black Wolf's blood were even better than he had expected. During the process of awakening a life seed, knights' bodies would be stimulated by life energy and their strength would increase, and their bodies would become stronger. After drinking Black Wolf's blood, this would be further enhanced. This was in addition to the fact that Chen Heng was already much stronger than an ordinary knight apprentice. It was not an exaggeration to say that before awakening his life seed, Chen Heng's strength was already comparable to many knights. Now that he had awakened a life seed under the effects of Black Wolf's blood, his strength had increased astronomically, and it made even Koripo feel shocked. Under Koripo's gaze, Chen Heng stood there, gasping for breath. As the effects of the Black Wolf's blood disappeared, the intense heat from his body gradually dissipated, leaving behind only immense fatigue and hunger. It was as if he had not slept or eaten in days, and even though he had a knight's body, he was barely able to hold on. Right now, he just wanted to fall down and sleep. Chapter 71, Strength. Oh, and have a good rest. Koripo could immediately tell what condition he was in and spoke looking at Chen Heng. Chen Heng feebly nodded and did not try to push himself. He found a room and directly fell unconscious. If it was anyone else, he would be worried if that person would try to do something to him while he was asleep. However, he was completely at ease towards Koripo. Not only was Koripo his teacher, but if Koripo also really wanted to do anything to Chen Heng would not be able to stop him anyways. As such, Chen Heng was naturally at ease towards such a person. After waking up again, it was already getting dark. It was dusk, and the last glimmers of sunlight fell on the ground, bringing with them a trace of warmth. Outside the room, Koripo and Crudo had not left. It seemed that they had been standing guard outside to make sure of Chen Heng's safety. How long did I sleep for? Chen Heng walked out of the room and asked Crudo. It's been half a day. Crudo nodded before smiling. If you kept sleeping, I would have had to go to your residence and tell Her Highness Verna to bring you back. That would be quite the situation, Chen Heng said as he laughed. How do you feel? Koripo asked as he looked at Chen Heng. I feel great. Chen Heng examined his body before replying. After he had awakened his life seed, he felt that his body had become unprecedentedly strong, and he seemed to have boundless power. Chen Heng could sense that after awakening his life seed, there seemed to be something near his heart, something that he could influence and control. It was as if his heart had an extra organ attached to it. He could clearly sense that thing's existence, and he could control it to a degree and even stimulate it. Needless to say, this was his life seed. One of the most important things to a knight. Once a knight stimulated their life seed, their power would skyrocket for a short period of time to a terrifying level. Of course, The cost was also extremely terrifying. If a knight excessively ignited their life energy, there would be all kinds of problems. If that happened, a reduction in lifespan would be a light consequence. The worst case scenario was that they could become crippled. Looking at Chen Heng, Koripo walked over and brought him to the training ground outside. Under the remaining sunlight as dusk fell, he tossed Chen Heng a sword and indicated for him to attack. Use your full strength, no need to hold back, he said calmly. Chen Heng nodded and did not hesitate to leap up and rush forwards. His speed was very fast. After awakening his life seed, he felt that his body had gone through massive changes, and both his speed and strength had greatly increased. If an ordinary person looked over, they would be unable to clearly see his specific movements and only be able to see blurs. The silver sword slashed downwards, bringing with it an intense sword wind as he slashed towards Koripo. Bang! At the key moment, Koripo raised his hand and lifted up a black sword, blocking this strike. This was evidently a strike that could instantly kill a tiger, but against him, it did not seem like much. He easily received it, and his body did not budge at all. Chen Heng was not surprised and once again advanced and slashed downwards. Their swords continuously clashed, becoming faster and faster. However, no matter how fast Chen Heng was, Koripo could easily follow him, easily blocking his attacks. At first, their exchanges were still on a level that Crudo could follow, but as they went on, Crudo's expression began to become unsightly. By now, Chen Heng was no longer holding back and used his full power. Each strike was extremely powerful, and they could give anyone a massive fright. At the very least, as Crudo reflected to himself, he had to admit that if Chen Heng's opponent was not Koripo but himself, he would not be able to receive even a casual blow from Chen Heng. Is the gap between us really so big? He inwardly sighed, feeling quite depressed. He and Chen Heng had become Koripo's students at around the same time. In fact, he had received some training since he was young, and he was definitely ahead of Chen Heng when they had both started night training. It was just that there was now such a big gap between them. However, despite feeling dispirited, he still felt quite happy. After all, Chen Heng was his friend, and their relationship had always been very good. Looking at Chen Heng's performance, he felt happy for him. In a sense, the stronger Chen Heng became, the better it would be for him as well. Thinking to the, Crudo calmed himself down and continued to spectate the battle. As time went on, the battle between the two people had become even more intense. Chen Heng's speed was incredible, and every attack he launched came from a difficult angle, making them hard to defend against. These were the skills he had gained through all of his experiences, making it difficult for his opponent to defend. However, to Koripo, they were not a big deal. He continued to calmly stand there, and no matter how Chen Heng attacked, his gaze was calm as he easily blocked. After a while, the two of them stopped with an unspoken agreement and did not continue to attack. So it's just like before, Chen Heng sighed as he smiled. No matter how I attack, I can't make teacher become serious. That's only for now, Koripo said as he shook his head. You only just awakened your life seed and there is still much room for growth. After you go back and rest, and settle into this new state, it won't be so easy for me to deal with you. When that time comes, if you stimulate your life seed, it would be difficult for even me to easily take you down. Hearing this, Chen Heng only smiled and did not say anything else. Even though it would be difficult for Koripo to easily take him down, he could still take him down without too much problem. And that was only in his normal state. As a top-tier knight, the power that Koripo would obtain from stimulating his life seed would be far greater than what he would obtain. In actuality, you are already very powerful, Koripo said as he looked at Chen Heng with a sincere gaze. With your strength, very few ordinary knights would be a match for you. In the entire Kuta Principality, apart from me, there are barely any people who would be able to defeat you in a direct confrontation. Chapter 72, Martial Tournament. Barely any people. Chen Heng understood what Koripo was saying and asked, does that mean apart from teacher, there are still people who can easily defeat me? There's a reason that the Kuta royal family has survived for so long, Koripo said calmly. In actuality, the Kuta royal family's power far exceeds that which you see. It's just that under normal circumstances, They are like me and do not concern themselves with the Kuta royal family's internal affairs. The Kuta royal family's internal affairs, Chen Heng muttered, before looking at Koripo seriously. Teacher, I don't quite understand. You want to ask why I'm the royal family's guardian knight, yet why I usually don't act. Koripo shook his head as he said, for us people, in order to obtain some things, we made an agreement with the king that we would help him at critical moments. However, this agreement is only with the king and not the Kuta royal family. So it's like that. Chen Heng nodded. Even though he did not know what kind of agreement Koripo had with the king, it seemed that Koripo only served the king himself. As for Olivia and Grith, it was not within his duty to serve them. This made things very clear. It's enough for you to have some basic understanding of this, Koripo said as he shook his head. Of course, you are my disciple, so if I can, I will also help you. Hearing this, Chen Heng's expression did not change, but he inwardly felt delighted. Koripo had made himself very clear. With these words from Koripo, Chen Heng's future plans would go quite smoothly. After all, Koripo was the most powerful being in the Kuta Principality, as well as a top-tier great knight. After chatting for a while, Krudo brought Chen Heng back to his own residence. After returning to his residence, the first thing that Chen Heng did was madly eat. Using the black wolf's blood not only used up much of his mental energy but his physical strength as well. He had been in an intensely hungry state this entire time, but he had endured it. After getting home, he began to devour food. Verna, who arrived a bit after, felt that this kind of appetite was quite terrifying. What did you do? Verna could not help but ask as she looked at Chen Heng. I just went to take care of some things, so I'm somewhat tired, Chen Heng said softly as he smiled and patted her head. The next day, he went into the palace to see Olivia. You've already awakened your life seed? Looking at Chen Heng and hearing the news that he brought, a look of shock appeared on Olivia's face. Her shock soon turned to delight. After Chen Heng had married Verna, his relationship with her had become quite close, and he was now one of her subordinates. Chen Heng awakening his life seed and becoming a true knight meant that the forces under her command had become stronger. How does the current you compare to Mada from before? She asked. Chen Heng thought for a moment before replying honestly, I'm stronger. Are you sure? Olivia's eyes widened as she looked at Chen Heng. Meeting Olivia's gaze, Chen Heng did not hesitate and directly nodded. Very good. Olivia nodded. Make some preparations. 2 months later, I'll have you face off against another knight. Do you dare? Chen Heng did not speak and only silently nodded. At the same time, he thought to himself. In 2 months. If he remembered correctly, Olivia seemed to be organizing a tournament to demonstrate her power. Chen Heng would probably face his opponent there. In that moment, many thoughts flashed through Chen Heng's mind. In the following 2 months, Chen Heng stopped doing many things and focused on training while keeping Verna company. During this period, the martial tournament that Olivia held began to start. The so-called martial tournament was one of Kuta's traditions. It was held once every 5 years, and in the past, it had always been officiated by the king personally. Now that the king had become bedridden, an exception was given for Olivia to officiate. For Olivia, this martial tournament was an important opportunity. If she played her cards well, she would be able to increase her reputation and show off her power. It was evident that her opponents would not allow things to go as she wished. Before, Olivia had given Chen Heng much advice out of worry. This was most likely why. After all, after Mada had been injured, the forces under her command had diminished. She seemed to have 3 knights under her command, but one needed to look after his territory, and Mada had become crippled while the remaining one had his own tasks to do. All of them had their own circumstances and could not attend this martial tournament. Under such circumstances, Chen Heng's appearance greatly reduced the pressure on her. Under countless gazes, this martial tournament began. Hello, I am Verdo from the Oligto family of the Olis Kingdom. On the sparse arena, a young man sat on his horse with a lance, a proud look on his face. State your name, knight. Kalin from the Nardo family of Darfin. Chen Heng's gaze was calm as he replied. You're the Kalin who married the princess? Verdo looked a bit surprised. After looking at Chen Heng's appearance, He nodded and said, "You indeed have good looks. However, I wonder if you have enough strength." He coldly laughed as he spurred his horse forwards. It had to be said that this young knight from the Olis kingdom was quite strong and his horse riding skills were also quite proficient. It was just that facing Chen Heng, the result was already set. Chen Heng sat on his horse and seeing the lance stab at him, his body did not move as he swept out with his hand and sent the lance flying. This was a shocking scene. With the momentum from the charge, the force behind the lance was incredibly great. Moreover, its length was not something an arm could compare to. With such a charge, even if the lance did not have a sharp tip, it could spear through someone. However, Chen Heng only waved his hand almost casually, and yet he had sent that massive lance savagely flying away. Crash! The young man was also sent flying by the force and heavily landed on the ground. Victory and defeat had been decided. All around them, the crowd cheered intensely, calling out Chen Heng's name. Following this was one battle after another. According to the rules, Chen Heng faced each opponent at the designated time. Sometimes, his opponents would be experienced knights, and at other times, his opponent would be dozens of outlander warriors from the desert. However, facing all of them, he was able to defeat all of them easily. Chapter 73, Meeting the Enemy Head-On. The martial tournament continued. As the tournament progressed, Chen Heng's name became more and more famous, and he was called out by countless people. His style was very well known. From the start, he had always used the quickest way to end the battle. His actions seemed like flowing clouds and running water, seeming incredibly smooth. During his battles, he had also fought other knights. Of course, most of them were not true knights and were only apprentice knights. These apprentice knights came from diverse backgrounds. There were Olivia's subordinates as well as those from various large families, all participating with their own goals. Among the many apprentice knights, there were some relatively powerful ones. It was just that facing Chen Heng, those knight apprentices all fell. Even the strongest among them could not put up a decent fight against Chen Heng, and they were all cleanly dealt with. A few days passed. Soon, Chen Heng was facing his final opponent. It was the Olis Kingdom's Delano. Delano was the Olis Kingdom's knight, and he represented Prince Grith this time. In actuality, everyone, including Chen Heng, knew what this knight's goal was in coming to this tournament. It was definitely to make Olivia lose face. The martial tournament was one's chance to show off their martial power, and neither Olivia or Grith would let this opportunity go. Moreover, just from a perspective of ruining their opponent's plans, the more Olivia wanted to do something, the more Grith would not let her succeed. As such, he had sent out Delano. "This is quite troublesome," a middle-aged man lightly sighed while looking at the middle-aged knight step out. It was not just Olivia and the others who had come to this martial tournament, even nobles like Kelly had come. The one who had spoken was a middle-aged man sitting next to Kelly. Father. Sitting beside the middle-aged man and looking down at the middle-aged knight, Kelly could not help but ask, "Why did Her Highness send out Kaelin to fight? Doesn't she know?" "I don't know what Her Highness is thinking either, but there are a few possibilities," the middle-aged man said as he shook his head. "Perhaps she doesn't want another of her knights to be defeated, resulting in a loss in face. Even though Kaelin will definitely lose, Kaelin is not a true knight, so it does not matter if he loses. After all, he is fighting as an apprentice knight, and facing a true knight. Even if he loses, it will not be shameful for him." That was what he guessed. But Kaelin? Kelly sighed, and looking at Chen Heng appear from the other side, he could not help but feel worried. Chen Heng rode his horse into the arena from the other side. He slowly rode his horse to the center and looked at his opponent. In front of him was quite an interesting-looking knight. He was a middle-aged knight who wore leather armor. His face was quite tanned and was covered with many scars. His gaze was sharp like that of an eagle's, making people instinctively feel respectful towards and scared of him. Just from his aura, he seemed quite extraordinary. Looking at this person, Chen Heng's gaze was calm as that person's information appeared in his mind. Delano was one of the Olis Kingdom's knights, and within the Olis Kingdom, he was a top-tier knight. From the information, this knight had defeated many other knights in direct confrontations. In terms of battle power, He was much higher than Mada in the past. No wonder Olivia would send Chen Heng. The martial tournament did not allow competitors to take their opponents' lives. Even if Chen Heng lost, as long as he surrendered in time, there would be no problems. Moreover, for a new knight like him, he did not need to defeat Knight Delano. He just needed to last against Knight Delano for a period of time and make the battle look spectacular. He was just a new knight, so others would not have expectations of him. Even if he lost, they would praise him for having such talent at such a young age, and they would not say anything about his loss. After all, it was only natural that a new knight would lose to a famous knight who had accomplished much already. Moreover, for Olivia, even if Chen Heng lost, other people would only talk about how she had gained a powerful genius knight. That was the benefit of being young and having little experience. Even though it did not matter if he lost, at the end of the day, losing was losing. How could it compare to the fame winning would bring? Fame and reputation was what Chen Heng needed. No need to waste words. Ahead, Delano spoke calmly. Let's directly start. Show me just how much power you have. Chen Heng did not reply and only nodded, and they sped towards each other on their horses at the same time. Bang! In the next moment, their swords simultaneously descended and collided in midair, resulting in a loud sound. Facing Delano, a true knight, Chen Heng did not use a lance, and he instead drew his sword. Sensing the strength from Chen Heng's sword, Delano's expression changed. He could clearly sense the power coming from Chen Heng's body. That power was incredibly terrifying, and it was not something that a knight apprentice could give off. It was not any inferior to his own power. Immediately, he sensed something. You understand now? In front of him, Chen Heng's voice sounded out, it's a pity that it's too late. As he spoke, Chen Heng's figure slightly bent as he gave off a unique stance, and his silver sword savagely descended. His strike contained terrifying power and brought with it a powerful gust of wind. Bang! Delano quickly retreated. Because of his overconfidence, he had fallen into a disadvantage and was being suppressed by Chen Heng. Wild gale billowed, and within the arena, the two figures continuously clashed, giving off immense sounds. The battle had only just started, but the two of them were intensely fighting. The long swords continuously flashed through the air, and each of their strikes, if they hit an ordinary person, would cause that person's body to split apart and turn into chunks of meat. As they continued to fight, their swords flashed with motes of white light. It was the manifestation of life energy. Chapter 74, Battle. Chen Heng had imagined many times what his battles with other knights would be like after becoming a knight himself. However, he had never thought that his first night battle would be under so many gazes. Waves of cheers sounded out from all directions. All around them, the spectators were straining their voices to cheer his name. They were all hoping for him to win, as well as for this spectacular battle to continue on. However, Chen Heng could not hear any of this. All of his attention was focused on his opponent, Delano. Delano from the Olis Kingdom was undoubtedly a terrifyingly powerful opponent. He was strong to the point that no matter what Chen Heng tried, it was incredibly difficult to defeat him. The person before him was like an undefeatable giant. Just standing there, he could make his opponent feel chills. Even Chen Heng could not find a way to defeat him right now, and he could only continuously attack. Of course, even though Chen Heng felt that the fight was quite difficult, how could Delano feel that things were any easier for him? Chen Heng felt like a massive rock that was incredibly firm. No matter what he did, he could not suppress him. Chen Heng's strength was also terrifying, and he was not like a new knight at all. Rather, he was like a powerful knight who had boundless experience. Facing an opponent like this, he also felt quite troubled and did not know how to defeat him. The situation came to a standstill. Soon, both of their bodies gave off a faint white light, and it condensed on their weapons. This caused the spectators to cry out. Knight Kelly and the middle-aged man beside him could not help but stand up, looks of shock on their faces. So it's like that. The middle-aged man was shocked but quickly came to his senses. No wonder Princess Olivia would send Knight Kalin. So Chen Heng was already a true knight. To be able to condense life energy and use it to cover their bodies and condense it onto their weapons, Only true knights who had awakened their life seed could do such a thing. Chen Heng's actions evidently proved that he had awakened his life seed and had become a true knight. This battle was no longer a fight between two people on different levels but a fight between knights. Moreover, from how things seemed, Delano would not be able to take down Chen Heng anytime soon. There was still more to be watched in this battle. Many people expressed their shock towards this conclusion. Knight Delano was no simple person. As early as 10 years ago, he was already a famed figure within the Olis kingdom. After defeating many other knights, he had become one of the top-tier experts among knights. Seriously speaking, there was not anyone under Princess Olivia's command who could rival this knight. Even if Knight Madder was in his peak condition, if he faced this Knight Delano, he would certainly lose. But what was this situation? A new knight was fighting on equal footing with Delano, and he was even suppressing him to a degree. Her Highness Olivia's foresight is incredible. Looking at this scene and standing beside Kelly, the middle-aged man could not help but sigh and feel a bit regretful. He knew that Kelly's relationship with Kaylin was quite good, and it was also at his directions that Kelly had put so much effort into getting to know Chen Heng. Back then, he had not thought too much. He had just felt that Chen Heng had a good reputation and was a strong apprentice knight, so he was worth having a good relationship with. However, it seemed that he still did not take Chen Heng seriously enough and did not notice his true potential. If I knew things would turn out like this, I should have married a daughter to him and bound him to our family. Right now, he felt quite regretful as he thought to himself. However, it was now too late. Chen Heng had already married Princess Verna and was Princess Olivia's supporter. No matter how much other people wanted him, they could only watch on now. How is it? Watching Chen Heng's performance, Olivia smiled and looked at the middle-aged man next to her. Under the faint light from the surroundings, the middle-aged man's appearance could be seen. He was wearing exquisite-looking leather armor, and he had a tall and straight figure. His face was cold and handsome and looked like someone who was difficult to approach. This was Knight Senbun, one of Olivia's 3 knights. After Madder had been injured, he replaced him and guarded Olivia. Standing beside Olivia, he was just as icy-looking as usual and expressionless. It was just that today, looking at the battle between Chen Heng and Delano in the arena, his expression could no longer remain calm, and a look of shock appeared on his handsome face. It was evident that he was also quite shocked towards Chen Heng's performance. His strength has completely surpassed mine. Standing beside Olivia, after silently spectating for a while, he sighed and said, "Both of these people are stronger than me. If I were to fight them in a direct fight, I would most likely be killed by them." Be killed. Olivia's heart trembled and also felt quite shocked. Kaylin is this powerful already? She thought to herself. Before, she had thought that Chen Heng's strength had been exaggerated. Olivia had sent Chen Heng to fight Delano so that Chen Heng would take a psychological blow so that he would develop more steadily. She had never thought that Chen Heng's strength was not exaggerated at all, and in fact, he had been quite humble. With the strength he was displaying, even Madder at his peak would be nothing in front of him. However, this was good too. No matter how powerful Chen Heng became, he would still be her subordinate, so him being stronger was better. The stronger Chen Heng was, the stronger she would be. As such, she gave a slight smile. "Do your best," she muttered to herself, "let me see your limit." Compared to Olivia, other people were not as calm. For example, Verna was jumping up and down anxiously. She looked at the battle below, and seeing the fight between Chen Heng and Delano, she could not help but feel worried. Chapter 75, Night Secret Technique. "Big sister, can you ask them to stop?" Looking at the battle below, Verna asked Olivia. "Stop? Why do they need to stop?" Olivia looked at her, and looking at her expression, she understood what Verna was thinking. "You need to believe in your husband. He won't lose. Moreover, even if he does lose, it won't be a big deal," she said calmly. Indeed, from how the situation looked, Chen Heng and Delano's strength was roughly on the same level. Under such circumstances, if one side wanted to take down the other, it might be possible, but it was not very likely that either side could kill the other. The difference between defeating and killing was simply too big. But Verna continued to look worried, and she wanted to continue speaking. "All right, you can go down to rest." Olivia waved her hand in annoyance. motioning for a servant to take Verna away so that she would not continue to annoy her. Below, the battle was still going on. Bang! The sounds of battle continuously sounded out. From when they had started, it had already been a long time. At some point, they had gotten off their horses and fought on the ground. On one hand, their horses did not have the stamina, and on the other hand, fighting on horseback greatly limited how much strength they could unleash. Boom! The two long swords collided in the air, unleashing a shocking sound. Chen Hen was covered with sweat, and he was sent a few steps backward by this impact. Of course, this was the same for Delano. In the next moment, they both simultaneously raised their heads and unhesitatingly rushed forwards again. Exquisite sword skills were unleashed. Whether it was Chen Hen or Delano, both had experienced many battles. As such, neither of them revealed many openings. Fighting a battle like this required intense patience. If they did not have enough patience, not only would they not be able to find an opening in their opponent, but they might themselves also show an opening. Both of them did quite well in this regard. However, because they did so well, this battle had become a war of attrition. By now, without anyone realizing it, the battle had gone on for 2 hours. During these 2 hours, even some of the spectators began to feel impatient and tired. They could only imagine how the two fighters were feeling. Despite fighting for so long, they still had immense strength. Each of their attacks could rip through iron and kill tigers. Their actions were still quite agile, but it was evident that both of them were becoming fatigued. At the end of the day, when fighting an opponent of the same level, the mental effort that they used was immense too. Under the present circumstances, Chen Hen gradually began to calm down. He knew that in a war of attrition, he held the advantage. After all, he was a young man in his early 20s, and his body was strong and he had much energy. On the other hand, Delano was already a middle-aged man. Life energy had given him a powerful body, but compared to a similarly powerful knight who was much younger, he was still at a disadvantage. As time went on, he would not be able to outlast Chen Heng, and he would end up using all of his stamina first. It was evident that Delano had realized this too. He swung his sword savagely, forcing Chen Hen back, while he also retreated and deeply breathed in. "Let's decide this in one attack," he said calmly as he raised his sword. As he did this, all of his muscles over his body bulged, and a faint white light covered him. His black sword blasted down. In that moment, Delano's aura skyrocketed, and his sword continued to savagely descend towards Chen Hen's body. This is a suffocating aura spread out, and sensing this, Chen Hen looked up. His body was soaked with sweat, and if one observed closely, they would see that his palm was already bleeding from the continuous impacts. As Delano swung his sword, a suffocating feeling spread out. Night secret technique. Sensing that feeling, Chen Hen inwardly sighed and thought to himself. Night secret techniques were unique battle skills that knights could unleash by instantly igniting their life energy through their life seed. This was done by greatly stimulating one's life seed, resulting in a burst of terrifying power. However, using a secret technique like this was very difficult, and most knights could not do so. This not only required talent but a legacy from previous generations as well. Looking at Delano accelerating towards him, Chen Hen deeply breathed in and slowly raised one hand. His aura began to slowly rise, and his life seed near his heart twitched. Dense life energy madly gathered, wrapping around his sword. In the next moment, he ferociously stepped forwards with his sword raised, and he used all of his strength to slash down. Wolf slash. As Chen Hen unleashed this night secret technique, a terrifying power blasted out from his body through his sword. On the spectator stands, seeing this, Crudo grinned and no longer felt as nervous. Chen Hen was not a rogue knight with no legacy. Rather, as Koripo's student, he had inherited many of the Wolf Knight School's skills, including the night secret techniques. For other knights, they could only feel out night secret techniques by themselves. However, Chen Hen could just learn them from Koripo. This wolf slash was one of Chen Hen's accomplishments, the only night secret technique he had grasped so far. Bang! A massive sound rang out, as if something had exploded. The moment the two swords collided, the two different waves of life energy slammed into each other. Following this, the two figures simultaneously flew backwards.